On the eve of the year 2076, the line between reality and fantasy shattered as a game-like scenario took over the world. Suddenly, dangerous dungeons filled with monsters appeared everywhere, and humanity was thrown into chaos. Powerful creatures wiped out entire populations, pushing mankind to the brink of extinction. But then, as if responding to the cries of humanity, divine talents were granted to a chosen few, giving rise to hunters, people who could wield incredible abilities. These hunters fought back, turning the tide against the monsters, and eventually saved the world. But as the dust settled, a new era began, an era where strength was everything and survival of the fittest became the law of the land. Now, hunters had to constantly evolve, fighting their way through dungeons, battling bosses, collecting treasures, and leveling up. This relentless quest for power marked the beginning of what became known as the Global Hunter Era. One of the most iconic places in this new world was the Hunter Square. This massive structure was known for its towering height and the aura of power that surrounded it. But before anyone could start their journey as a hunter, they had to face the 1,000 steps, a symbolic trial. If you made it to the top, you'd awaken your hunter class and gain the chance to unlock your full potential. However, not everyone hit the jackpot with their class. And that's where we meet Su Yang. After completing the trial, Su Yang descended the grand staircase of Hunter Square, but instead of excitement, he was feeling, well, disappointed. He'd hoped for a rare, powerful class, but what did he get? A warrior, the most basic class you could imagine. His stats? Nothing special. Strength at 12, speed and spirit at 10. Basically, not a great start. Warriors like him often found themselves in tough spots during close combat, facing more risks than those with specialized abilities. It felt like no matter how hard they trained, they were always in someone else's shadow. And just when Su Yang was coming to terms with his reality, along comes Wang Fei, a loudmouth looking to stir the pot. Wang Fei, who'd just awakened as an ice mage, couldn't resist throwing some shade at Su Yang, calling him a nobody orphan who didn't deserve anything more than grunt work. But Su Yang wasn't having it. He clapped his hands, like he was swatting an invisible fly, and hit Wang Fei with a quick, sarcastic clapback. He congratulated him on becoming an ice mage, but with a sly remark about how mages are basically glass cannons, strong in magic but fragile as hell in a real fight. Su Yang even told Wang Fei to run those hands if he really wanted the smoke. But as expected, Wang Fei started spewing weak threats, hiding behind his squad instead of stepping up. Just as the tension was building and it seemed like a brawl was about to break out, the vibe changed fast. One of Wang Fei's group members noticed something that made everyone freeze. The Spirit Hunt Guild's raiding team had arrived. This wasn't just any guild. This was a top-tier powerhouse known all across East Spirit City for its legendary achievements. And leading the group was none other than Zhao Ming, the vice president of the guild. Zhao Ming was a big deal. A guy you usually only saw on posters or in promotional videos, but here he was standing in the flesh, commanding the space around him with his presence. Alright, so Wang Fei, still riding the high of his Ice Mage class, decides to shoot his shot with the Spirit Hunt Guild. You can almost see the ambition in his eyes as he steps forward, eager to prove himself. He starts buttering up the raiding team, throwing compliments at the guild, and trying to showcase his rare Ice Mage abilities. The guy's got some confidence, hoping this might just land him a spot in one of the most prestigious guilds out there. At first, his request is straight up denied by one of the guild members. They stop him in his tracks, telling him to apply through the official recruitment process like everyone else. No shortcuts here. But then, in a twist, Zhao Ming, the vice president of the guild, notices Wang Fei's hustle and the potential value his control skill could bring to their team. So, out of respect for the effort, Zhao Ming hands Wang Fei a recruitment card. Big move. This not only highlights Wang Fei's potential, but also shows that the Spirit Hunt Guild is always scouting for new talent, even if they're selective. Now, seeing this go down, everyone else around them jumps in, trying to grab the raiding team's attention. People start shouting out their professions and abilities, hoping to score a spot in the guild too. But the Spirit Hunt team isn't having it. They make it clear that they're not here for a recruitment drive. Instead, they tell everyone to stick to the official process and stop bothering them with random applications. They drop this message with the kind of no-nonsense professionalism that shuts down any further debate. But then Su Yang, feeling a bit bold, asks if they're interested in warriors like him. The response? Nothing but disdain. The team acts like he just asked the dumbest question in the world, and you can almost feel the awkward silence as they brush him off without a second thought. This was just another reminder of how low warriors rank in the eyes of these elite guilds, especially compared to rarer classes. For Su Yang, this moment felt like another blow, highlighting just how difficult his path was going to be. In a world where your future was determined by the strength and rarity of your profession, being a basic warrior was like having a permanent handicap. Even the lower-tier guilds weren't interested in his class. But then, Su Yang overhears something that catches his attention. The Spirit Hunt Guild was gearing up to raid the Black Dragon's lair today. They were using the teleportation gate inside Hunter Square to access the dungeon. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Black Dragon's lair is no joke. It's the largest S-tier dungeon in City CA, packed with monsters, elite creatures, and at the very end of it all, the most terrifying boss, Black Flame Wings Athos, a level 99 monster that's taken down even the strongest guilds before. Despite how deadly this dungeon is, word has it that the Spirit Hunt Guild has hunters at 4th Transcendence or higher, meaning they've got the firepower to handle it. Plus, they've got a reputation for never failing a raid, so maybe they can actually pull it off. But for Su Yang, hearing all this just made him feel worse. Here he was, watching others about to take on this epic quest, while he was stuck in a basic warrior class, doomed to a life of mediocrity. The thought of being trampled underfoot by stronger hunters, while he struggled to survive, was starting to weigh on him. Just as he was sinking into despair, something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, a system notification popped up, catching him completely off guard. The message? Perfect soul host detected. Part-time system will soon be bound to you. Wait, what? Su Yang couldn't believe it. This wasn't just some random notification, it was a game changer. And as if that wasn't enough, when he opened his eyes again, he found himself transformed. He wasn't Su Yang anymore. He had become the very thing everyone feared, the level 99 Black Dragon, Athos, the Black Flame Wing itself. So, now that Su Yang is transformed into Athos, the Black Flame Dragon, he's suddenly aware of the sheer power he's gained. His health pool is insane, 5 million HP. And his stats? Absolutely off the charts. We're talking incredible strength, speed, and spirit values that make him almost unstoppable. Oh, and did I mention his 80% immunity to both physical and magical attacks? Yeah, that's the dragon bloodline at work, giving him an insane advantage. And the skills this guy has? They're straight out of a legend. First, there's his Black Flames, a destructive power he can unleash without any cost, dealing massive magical damage to anyone who dares to face him. Then, he's got Dragon Suppression, which lowers the stats of any creature below his level by 20%. So, basically, any lower-level monsters don't stand a chance against him. But wait, it gets even better. Su Yang's got an entire arsenal of abilities that make him practically untouchable. Dragon Blast hits with 300% of his strength, which at this point is already crazy high. Then there's Dragon's Roar, a skill that stuns everything within a 300-meter radius for 5 seconds if their spirit stat is lower than his. And finally, his Dragon's Eye gives him the ability to see everything in his territory, even without a direct line of sight. Basically, Su Yang has become an unstoppable force, and the realization of his power leaves him in total shock. His new stats? 3,000 strength alone, plus all his resistances and unique skills. This power rush hits him so hard that he lets out a mighty roar, a primal scream that shakes the entire area. Even though Su Yang knows this transformation is only temporary, the feeling of controlling a level 99 dragon like Athos is exhilarating. Then, something clicks in his mind. If he can use this power to defeat other players or monsters, the experience he gains could be transferred back to his original form. This realization fills him with excitement. Even though his basic warrior class is considered weak, this opportunity could be the key to leveling up fast and completely changing his fate in a world that only respects power. But as Su Yang is processing all of this, he notices something odd. The monsters in front of him are clearly shaken. Turns out, his dragon roar had activated without him even realizing it, and these creatures were suffering from the aftereffects. Among them, one hooded figure stands out, trembling and begging for mercy, calling Su Yang their king. That's when it hits him. These monsters see him as their leader because he's embodying the Black Dragon. So, Su Yang decides to play the part. He looks down on them with all the arrogance of a superior being, commanding them to rise. Immediately, the hooded figure praises his immense power and even hints that once this dragon reaches maturity, it could easily crush the human world. This is a big moment for Su Yang. as he realizes the black dragon he's controlling is still just in its juvenile stage. That's wild because normally bosses in dungeons have fixed levels. But this dragon? It seems like it has the potential to grow even stronger. This revelation piques Su Yang's interest. He's definitely going to keep an eye on that. But then, Su Yang's attention is pulled in another direction. A beautiful elf is locked in a cage nearby. She's got elegant silver hair and striking crimson eyes, but right now, she's struggling under the pressure of Su Yang's dragon aura. When she notices him staring at her, she demands to be released, threatening him with retribution from the elven race. Su Yang? He's not intimidated at all. In fact, he's more fascinated. Since the merging of the game world with reality, mythical races like elves have become a thing, but they're super rare, especially ones like this who usually stay secluded in dungeon instances. This was his first time encountering one up close, and he's captivated by the chance to interact with her. But before he can engage further, the moment is interrupted by a spatial disturbance, a ripple in the air signaling that a player is about to enter the scene. The elf, sensing this, immediately assumes that her savior is arriving, and she starts taunting the dragon, believing her freedom is near. But to her surprise, the dragon, who she thought would ignore her, turns its attention back towards her. This puzzles her because typically, dragons don't even acknowledge such jibes. Su Yang, now in his powerful dragon form, had more pressing concerns than getting into a back and forth with the elf. He knew the Spirit Hunt Guild was on its way, and while they had a reputation for being unbeatable, Su Yang wasn't so sure they'd have what it takes to overcome him, not in his current formidable state. Still, he reminded himself to never underestimate an opponent. Overconfidence can lead to defeat, and Su Yang knew the Spirit Hunt Guild wouldn't be coming without a solid plan. To get a better sense of their strategy, Su Yang activated his Dragon's Eye ability, allowing him to scout the guild's movements from a distance. He quickly spotted their main assault team, led by Lei Shan, a level 99 Thunderstorm Master. Alongside him were the guild's elite members: Zhao Ming, a level 95 Storm Archer, Qin Yuan, a level 96 Healing Paladin, and Li Dan, the level 98 Holy Shield Master. All of them were marching toward his lair with one goal in mind: defeat the Black Dragon, Athos, and elevate their guild status to the 5th stage of transformation. Su Yang couldn't help but respect their boldness, but he was curious how long that confidence would last. Soon enough, the guild's advance was challenged by a swarm of magic wyverns, lesser creatures, but enough to slow down most challengers. Not the Spirit Hunt Guild, though. Lei Shan didn't even flinch. Calmly, he ordered his tanks to lead the charge while the rest of the guild used fire-based attacks to maximize their damage output. In perfect coordination, they wiped out the wyverns effortlessly, barely breaking stride. Watching from his lair, Su Yang was impressed by their skill and teamwork. The guild lived up to its reputation as a formidable force, but he knew these lesser minions weren't enough to slow them down, so it was time to raise the stakes. Su Yang summoned a dragon warrior, a massive, towering beast that sent a wave of awe and apprehension through the guild. Even Lei Shan was caught off guard by the sudden appearance of this behemoth. But the Spirit Hunt Guild wasn't going down that easily. Lei Shan quickly organized his team, and the dragon warrior, with its strength on par with the guild's elite, posed a real threat. The beast's ability to teleport short distances caught the guild off guard, almost overwhelming their DPS units. But just in time, Lei Shan activated his Divine Light Shield, a barrier that protected his team from the dragon warrior's devastating attacks. Amid the chaos, Zhao Ming took control, ordering the ranged units to retreat while the melee fighters engaged. With strategic precision, Zhao unleashed his Storm Arrow, a powerful skill that helped take down the dragon warrior and demonstrated the guild's resilience and flexibility when faced with unexpected challenges. Despite their success, Su Yang remained calm. This only proved that an elite monster like the dragon warrior could challenge the guild, but not stop them. Meanwhile, the elf, still in her cage, mocked Su Yang again for relying on minions that were easily dispatched. Little did she know, Su Yang had more up his sleeve. With a smirk, he summoned 6 more elite dragons, sending them into the fray. This sudden appearance of multiple elite dragons threw the Spirit Hunt Guild into chaos. Even their elite members were momentarily unsure of what to do. This wasn't part of any record or strategy. No one expected the Black Dragon to send units after them before they'd even reached him. It was a strange occurrence, one that had everyone on edge. But not Lei Shan. He stayed calm, confident that these were still just elite monsters, and dealing with elites was his specialty. With Lei Shan's leadership, the guild quickly reformed their ranks. He ordered his tanks to prioritize healing and maintain aggro, while the rest focused on taking down the elite dragons. Combining their sheer raw power with expert coordination, the guild once again managed to overpower the new threats. Watching from afar, Su Yang was surprised. He had expected the elite dragons to catch them off guard and push them back, but the guild handled the situation far better than he thought. They were more tenacious than he had given them credit for. But there was something else that puzzled him. Why were they so eager to challenge him? Sure, they were strong, but not strong enough to defeat him in his current form. Even with their elite members, they were barely handling the monsters he sent their way. Unless they had some hidden trump card, something they hadn't revealed yet. As Su Yang watched the Spirit Hunt Guild, he was deep in thought, only to suddenly notice something unexpected. The guild had changed direction. They were just steps away from confronting him, but now they were heading somewhere else. This definitely wasn't part of the usual raid strategy, and it set off alarms in Su Yang's mind. Curious about what they were up to, he activated his dragon vision to get a better look at their destination. That's when he spotted it. The Dragon Slayer's tomb. Inside, there was something glowing, an item that immediately caught Su Yang's attention. It was the Dragon Slayer's heart, a quest item capable of negating dragon talents. The moment he realized what this meant, a surge of rage overwhelmed him. If the guild got their hands on that heart, they'd be able to ignore his dragon talents, rendering his powers useless. His subordinates, startled by his sudden reaction, asked if he was all right, but Su Yang wasn't concerned about them right now. His mind was racing. He had seen this kind of thing happen in games before. A near-invincible boss would have its defenses weakened by a key item or mechanic, allowing the players to defeat it. If the Dragon Slayer's heart could truly bypass his talents, then there was a real chance he could be defeated. But now that he knew their plan, there was no way he was going to stand by and let them acquire it. With a powerful flap of his wings, Su Yang left his lair at an insane speed. The force was so intense that it shattered the sound barrier, creating a shockwave that shook the ground. His sudden departure caused an uproar among the monsters under his command. They were cheering, thrilled by the sight of their king finally taking action. Even the elf was stunned. This was completely out of character for a dragon. Normally, they would wait in their lair for adventurers to come to them. But the way Su Yang reacted was as if he were in a frenzy, and that was far more concerning. Meanwhile, the Spirit Hunt Guild continued their march through the dungeon, unaware of the fury heading their way. Lei Shan was frustrated. Things weren't going according to the guide they had received. Zhao Ming suggested that maybe the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion had deceived them with a faulty strategy. But despite all the uncertainty, Zhao Ming still had faith in the pavilion's reputation. He'd even traded his universe ring for that guide, so he wasn't about to question its authenticity. However, Qin Yuan raised a valid concern. If they ran into another unexpected situation, they might end up alerting the Black Dragon. Lei Shan dismissed this, confident that the dragon wouldn't leave its lair unless provoked. After all, according to their guide, the Black Dragon was nothing more than a lazy, overpowered lizard. As long as they didn't attack first, they had nothing to worry about. The dragon was just a stepping stone for the guild, and with all the damage it had caused, Lei Shan was determined to make the Black Dragon pay. But Qin Yuan had other motivations. He was more focused on completing the Elf Maiden's Easter egg. If they succeeded, they'd not only gain a pass to the Elven Kingdom, but the Elf Maiden herself would obey their commands. Lei Shan, understanding his team's ambitions, promised that once the dragon was defeated, they could deal with the elf however they wanted. However, their planning was cut short when one of the guild members, Chen Yuan, spotted a large silhouette in the sky. At first, they thought it was just a flying dragon, a minor threat, but something didn't add up. These types of creatures were labeled as guard monsters and shouldn't be appearing here. As the silhouette got closer, their mistake became clear. It wasn't just a guard monster. It was the Black Dragon, Athos himself. Shock spread through the guild. They were supposed to face the Black Dragon later in their quest, but now he was right in front of them. And without the Dragon Slayer's heart, the item they believed was essential for their victory, they were in deep trouble. Panic started to spread, and for a brief moment, the guild even contemplated retreating. Su Yang, watching their fear, couldn't help but smirk. The supposedly invincible Spirit Hunt Guild, reduced to cowards when stripped of their tricks. This played right into his hands. He saw this as the perfect opportunity to eliminate them and level up in one go. But just as he prepared to attack, Lei Shan's resolve hardened. He wasn't about to back down. As Su Yang readied his devastating attack, Lei Shan acted fast, using his lightning ability to interrupt the dragon's assault. While it wasn't the most powerful strike, it was enough to throw off Su Yang's attack, buying the guild precious time. Lei Shan wasn't about to back down. He unleashed a powerful aura of electricity, signaling to his guild that they were going to confront this black dragon head-on. There was no turning back now. He firmly instructed everyone. Retreat wasn't an option. Lei Shan believed in their strength and reminded them that while the dragon was powerful, so were they. And to motivate them even further, he promised generous rewards, money, equipment, even women, whatever they wanted once they took down the dragon. With that promise, the guild members' spirits were lifted. Even though the dragon looked as menacing as ever, they now believed they could do the impossible. Meanwhile, Su Yang couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. He was eager to see what this renowned guild had in store for him. As the confrontation escalated, Lei Shan swiftly gave orders to Li Dan to boost both their defenses and offensive capabilities. Li Dan activated their strongest defense barrier, while the healers were called to support with mana regeneration, ensuring the team could hold their ground. At the same time, the support classes worked to apply single-target buffs on Lei Shan and Zhao Ming, maximizing their attack potential. According to their strategy, they just needed a small window of opportunity to grab the Dragon Slayer's heart from the tomb. If they could create even the tiniest opening, there was still hope for them to defeat the dragon. But just as they were getting ready to execute their plan, Su Yang made his move. With a single powerful crash of his tail, he smashed down on the guild, causing chaos and destruction. He wasn't going to give them any time to breathe. But to his surprise, as the dust and debris settled, a flash of light and magic attacks came flying at him. The guild was still alive. It turned out that Li Dan had managed to activate a triple holy light barrier at the last second, protecting the guild from what could have been a deadly blow. It was unexpected. Bosses typically didn't attack first like this, so the guild had been caught off guard. But knowing that bosses could only use one skill at a time, Lei Shan and his team knew this was their chance to strike back. Qian Yuan quickly invoked a divine blessing, enhancing the power of their holy light skills. The other guild members followed suit, applying buffs to Lei Shan and Zhao Ming, boosting their power to the max. Now fully enhanced, they prepared to unleash their full might against the Black Dragon. Su Yang, watching them regroup so quickly, was impressed. The guild had been caught by surprise, but within moments, they were back on their feet and ready to counterattack. It was too late for Su Yang to dodge, so he braced himself, preparing for their assault. Lei Shan and Zhao Ming unleashed their most devastating attacks, combining all their strongest skills into one concentrated strike aimed directly at Athos. The impact of the attack was so intense that it could be felt far beyond the battlefield. Lei Shan, confident that they had done serious damage, commanded his guild to prepare for another wave. But as the smoke cleared, his confidence shattered. To his shock, the dragon stood there, barely scratched. The guild's most potent attacks had only managed to deal 10,000 damage. That wasn't even 1% of Athos' health. The dragon's damage reduction rate was far higher than they had anticipated. Seeing this, some guild members began to question whether they should retreat. But Lei Shan urged them to stay strong. According to the guide, the dragon wouldn't unleash its ultimate skills until its health dropped below 75%, so they still had a chance to distract it long enough to get the artifact. They continued to fight, hoping for that small chance. But Su Yang was growing impatient. Their tenacity was starting to feel like a swarm of mosquitoes, annoying but ultimately ineffective. Their attacks couldn't touch him, yet they still clung to hope. But Su Yang was done entertaining them. It was time to end this. With a deafening dragon roar, Su Yang unleashed a blast so powerful that the very ground beneath him crumbled. The guild members were overwhelmed by the roar, knocked flat by its devastating power. As the dust settled, only Athos remained, standing tall and proud. The Spirit Hunt Guild, even with all its elite power, had fallen before him. It was clear now, even an A-level guild was no match for him. In the aftermath of Athos's devastating dragon roar, Lei Shan struggled to stay conscious. He couldn't believe it. This was not how things were supposed to go. The guide had let them down again, filling them with false hope and strategies that didn't account for the sheer power of this dragon. Despite everything, Lei Shan's spirit remained unbroken. He urged his guild members to regroup and launch another attack, clinging to the belief that Athos would be vulnerable after unleashing such a powerful skill. But as he surveyed the battlefield, Lei Shan's heart sank. His guild members, the best fighters he had, were already incapacitated, scattered across the ground. Even the strongest among them had been overwhelmed by the dragon's formidable power. What crushed his spirit completely was realizing that the dragon they thought would be paralyzed after its attack was, in fact, far from immobilized. Contrary to the guide's information, Athos was on the move, preparing to strike again. Without warning, Athos unleashed a dragon's breath, a skill even more destructive than anything the guild had faced. The sheer force and intensity of the flames obliterated what little remained of their defenses. All Lei Shan could do was curse the damned dragon, vowing to return the favor 100 times over. As the last of the guild members fell, a system interface popped up for Su Yang. It announced that the intruders had been completely eliminated, and now it was time for the distribution of experience. To Su Yang's surprise, the amount of XP was overwhelming. But then again, he had just wiped out a guild full of high-level players, many ranging from level 80 to 99. The XP was flowing in fast, and Su Yang's level skyrocketed from level 1 to level 20, instantly reaching the level cap of his first transformation. But that wasn't all. He'd gained so much XP that even after hitting the level cap, his experience overflowed, though 40% was lost due to the cap limit. He still had 430,000 XP stored up, plenty to fuel his next transformation. The realization was thrilling. After his job change, he could potentially shoot all the way up to level 40 of the second transformation in no time. Su Yang couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. This was beyond anything he'd expected. On top of that, he had accumulated 200 unallocated attribute points, ready to use when he returned to his original form. But before he could even think about that, Su Yang's attention shifted to the battlefield, which was now littered with shimmering lights. A clear sign of equipment drops from the high-level players he had just defeated. Eager to see what he'd earned, Su Yang began collecting the loot, expecting to find some gold-tier gear at best. But to his astonishment, among the items were even higher rarity treasures. There was a diamond-tier longbow, cloud flow boots, a platinum-tier staff, and a flame greatsword. These items exceeded his expectations, especially the longbow, which he immediately recognized as belonging to Zhao Ming, the vice president of the Spirit Hunt Guild. Su Yang couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of Zhao Ming's reaction to losing such a prized item. Although Su Yang was a warrior and couldn't use the longbow or staff, he knew their value on the black market would bring in a substantial profit. Along with the weapons and armor, he found potions and premium skill scrolls, all capable of boosting his abilities. But what really caught his eye was a broken boundless gem. This exceptional item was a game changer. It had the ability to remove level restrictions from equipment, which meant Su Yang could wield gear like the platinum-tier flame greatsword, even though it normally required a minimum level of 79. This weapon wasn't just a perfect match for his warrior class. It also came with incredible attributes, including a flame enchantment that would add fire damage to his attacks and the ability to summon a flame giant, though it had a one-day cooldown. The greatsword was insanely powerful, and Su Yang couldn't wait to use it. Just as he was admiring his loot, the system notified him that he could now return to his original form. Without hesitation, Su Yang triggered the transformation. Light enveloped his massive dragon form, and in the next moment, he found himself back in his human body. To his surprise, he wasn't just back in his old location. The system had conveniently returned him to his house. But none of that mattered as much to Su Yang as one thing. He was now level 20. What had just happened was no dream. It was real. Without wasting any time, Su Yang went ahead and allocated his newly earned attribute points. He put 100 points into strength and 50 points each into speed and spirit. Now, typically, warriors don't bother investing in spirit, but Su Yang wasn't just any regular warrior anymore. With the system advantage, he wasn't bound by the usual path. Plus, he'd obtained scrolls that required a certain amount of spirit to use. But just as he confirmed the distribution of his points, something unexpected happened. An overwhelming aura erupted from his body, as if the very essence of his being had been supercharged. The power radiating from him was so intense that it sent a shockwave through the room, knocking over items and leaving everything in disarray. The experience served as a stark reminder of the raw power he now commanded, and Su Yang mentally noted to be more careful in the future. He didn't want to lose control again. Now that his stats were sorted, Su Yang's next priority was heading to the temple to complete his job change. But when he checked the time, he realized it was already too late to go today. With no other choice, he decided to rest for now and head to the temple tomorrow. The thought of starting the transfer quest filled him with excitement. He couldn't wait to see how his job change would take him to the next level. Meanwhile, Back at the Spirit Hunt Guild headquarters, the early return of their leader, Lei Shan, sent a wave of shock through the guild members. They knew his early arrival meant one of two things. Either they had swiftly vanquished the Black Dragon, or they had suffered a crushing defeat. It didn't take long for the truth to become clear. Lei Shan's diminished state told the whole story. His level had dropped from 99 to 90, something no one had ever witnessed before. The guild, which had always prided itself on being invincible, was in disbelief. They had relied on their strategies and the guide from the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion, certain that defeat was impossible. But this defeat only fueled Lei Shan's rage. He commanded his men never to mention that backstabbing pavilion in front of him again. He had traded his universe ring for that strategy, and all it had done was lead them to ruin. The defeat had hit his men hard too. Zhao Ming, the vice president, had dropped to level 86 and lost his diamond tier weapon, which took a heavy toll on him. Even Xian Yuan, the guild's priest, was in a full-blown tantrum. He had lost his precious cloud flow boots and the chance to secure an elf girlfriend. With all this, Lei Shan's eyes sparked with fury, radiating the power of thunder. It was a clear sign of the storm brewing inside him. He vowed to seek retribution against the pavilion for their betrayal and wouldn't rest until he got answers from those deceivers. The next day arrived, and at the Anshan orphanage, the atmosphere was completely different from any typical day. The place was alive with activity. Children ran around, playing and laughing, while the adults were busy trying to keep things under control. But things were even more chaotic than usual, because the orphanage had received a surprising number of deliveries. Piles of boxes and packages had arrived, much to everyone's confusion. The elderly caretaker, who oversaw the orphanage, was particularly puzzled. He wondered if there had been some sort of mistake. How could all these goods be meant for them? He even asked the delivery staff if they were at the wrong place. But they reassured him they were in the right location. They showed him the paperwork, which clearly stated that all the deliveries were addressed to the Anshan orphanage, and the person who had sent them was none other than Su Yang. This revelation left the old man shocked. He knew Su Yang very well. He knew Su Yang didn't have much money, so how could he afford to send so many supplies to the orphanage? The caretaker couldn't wrap his head around it. As he stood there lost in thought, something caught his attention. A little girl was playing dangerously close to a stack of crates. His parental instincts kicked in, and his heart dropped when he saw the crates start to tip over, ready to fall on the girl. The caretaker tried to rush over, but he was too old to get there in time. All he could do was shout out, hoping someone could reach her before it was too late. Just as the crates were about to fall, a figure rushed in with remarkable speed. An arm shot out, catching and stabilizing the crates in the nick of time, preventing them from crashing down on the little girl. The rescuer? None other than Su Yang, the same person who had sent all the deliveries. He had arrived just in time to save the day. As soon as the kids recognized him, they rushed toward him, all smiles and excitement. It was clear Su Yang was well loved at the orphanage, and seeing the kids so lively brought him a sense of peace. The old caretaker was equally excited to greet him, and he couldn't help but notice how strong Su Yang had become. Su Yang was holding the heavy crates like they were nothing, a clear sign that he had already received a profession, which made the caretaker proud. Despite his joy, the old man couldn't shake his concern for Su Yang's safety. It was second nature for him to worry about the children he had raised, so he couldn't help but advise Su Yang to remain cautious and prioritize his own well-being. Su Yang offered an awkward smile in response, fully aware that he was now the monster others should be afraid of. Still, he was touched by the caretaker's concern. Growing up as an orphan, Su Yang had always felt fortunate to have someone who cared for him like family. Wanting to ease the old man's worries, Su Yang reassured him, saying there was nothing to fear. After all, the monsters couldn't hurt him, not with the strength he now had. He even mentioned he was heading to the temple to complete his job change, a fact that made the caretaker momentarily relieved. But as Su Yang walked away, the caretaker was left puzzled. Su Yang's mention of monsters and his rapid progression in power, especially since he had only awakened the day before, left the old man with more questions than answers. Shortly after leaving the orphanage, Su Yang made his way to the profession change hall. Upon arrival, he found himself caught up in the whirlwind of rumors circulating the area. The hot topic of the day? The Spirit Hunt Guild had been completely decimated, and it all traced back to a problem with the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion's branch. Their guide had failed the guild in the worst way possible. Word had it that, in their quest for revenge, the Spirit Hunt Guild had confronted the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion, sparking a scandal that was now casting a dark shadow over the pavilion's reputation. The Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion, known for its precise and highly respected raid strategies, was now under scrutiny for a mistake that seemed totally out of character for such a prestigious organization. As Su Yang moved through the crowd, absorbing the gossip, he pieced together the key details. The Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion wasn't just any raid group. It was a top-tier organization full of fifth-tier experts. If there really was a flaw in their strategy, it was only a matter of time before they tried to rectify it by coming after him. But instead of feeling worried, Su Yang found himself smiling. The thought of going up against the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion didn't intimidate him at all. It actually excited him. He imagined the high-quality equipment he could snatch from them after their inevitable confrontation. However, his thoughts were abruptly interrupted by none other than the guy who couldn't mind his own business, Wang Fei. And as usual, he had his group of nobodies with him. Wang Fei, with his trademark arrogance, wasted no time in throwing shade. He mocked Su Yang for still coming to the temple, claiming that Su Yang's profession was nothing but trash. Before Su Yang could respond, Wang Fei cut him off, making it clear that his question was rhetorical. He knew why Su Yang kept coming here, because no guild wanted him. According to Wang Fei, Su Yang had to come every day, hoping for a change in luck, and Wang Fei found that hilarious. But all jokes aside, Wang Fei said it was a good time to finish what they started the other day. He smugly reminded Su Yang that he had let him off the hook because of guild business, but now that his schedule was free, and with his points allocated and new skills learned, he was ready to teach Su Yang a lesson. Wang Fei was itching to demonstrate his new abilities, and it looked like Su Yang was his chosen target. Alright, so things are heating up for Wang Fei. Just as he was about to make his move, Su Yang decides he's not going to wait around. Before Wang could even react, Su Yang strikes first. He throws a punch so powerful that Wang's face ends up catching his fists. The hit was insane. Wang Fei practically becomes a human pinball, bouncing around, and before anyone could blink, his HP drops to 5%. Yup, Su Yang almost killed him with one blow. This wasn't just a fight, it was a message. Su Yang made it loud and clear to Wang Fei's little crew. Mess with him, and you're gonna get a taste of these hands, just like Wang did. And you know what? They weren't about to test him on that. So, they scooped up Wang Fei and beat a hasty retreat, not looking back. But as they disappeared from view, Su Yang hears something from behind, applause. He turns around, and who does he see? A woman in black. Now, her outfit might kind of look like a nun's, but the thigh-high slit in her dress? Yeah, she's definitely not a nun. Turns out she's a transition guide from the temple, a key staff member from the Hall of Change, and she's impressed with Su Yang's skills. She asks if she can help him, and Su Yang, being on top of things, says he's ready for a profession transition. Lucky for him, this guide is exactly who he needs. As they walk together, she can't help but notice something interesting. Su Yang looks like he's new to the world of hunters. He has that vibe. But what she saw earlier, the strength and speed he showed, that was no rookie move. She starts to wonder if maybe he's a level 20 professional, a rank usually reserved for the second-gen kids of powerful families. This guy is definitely not what she expected, but her curiosity has to wait because they've arrived at their destination, the transition god statue. This thing is massive, carved from marble, and radiating with a kind of magic that can evaluate your profession and level. The statue assigns transition tasks based on this, and completing one is the only way to advance as a hunter. Now, these transition tasks? They're no joke. They come in 4 levels of difficulty, each testing your strength and skill. The guide suggests Su Yang try a 3-star task, but Su Yang, being Su Yang, wonders why he shouldn't go for a 4-star. She explains that the 4-star challenges are on a whole other level. Fail one, and you're stuck, unable to transition for life. Not a decision to take lightly. Understanding the risk, Su Yang steps up to the statue. He extends his arm, and a flash of lightning fills the room. The statue is evaluating him. Once it confirms his eligibility, a series of tasks pop up, each more difficult than the last, each with its own rewards. The 1-star task? Easy. Just defeat 10 level 20 sharp-tooth boars, and in return, he could become either a charge warrior or a defense warrior. Simple enough. 2-star? Slightly tougher, but now with the reward of a common grade, 1st-tier warrior skill book. 3-star? Even more intense, but it comes with a superior grade skill book that would make Su Yang even stronger. Then we get to the 4-star task, which is where things start to get real. This one would test him like nothing else, but if he succeeds, Su Yang could become a bloodthirsty warlord. And the reward? A fine-grade, 1st-tier warrior skill book. But here's the twist. As Su Yang's looking through these options, something catches his eye. There's a task beyond the 4-star challenge, a 5-star transition task. And this one? It's different. Dark. The background color is ominous, standing out from the rest. So, Su Yang takes a closer look at the 5-star task, and let me tell you, this thing is on a whole different level. The challenge? He has to venture deep into the dangerous Cold Moon Forest, where he needs to take down 100 level 20 ordinary gray wolves, 10 elite savage wolves, and 1 level 20 boss gray wolf. And to make it even crazier, he's not allowed to use any equipment or items he got as gifts or through trades. Yeah, this is beyond overkill. But here's the kicker. The rewards totally justify the insane challenge. If Su Yang pulls this off, he gets a special transition to the path of a demon warrior, plus 100 extra points to his spirit attribute, an epic grade first-tier demon warrior skill, and some exclusive temple benefits. Naturally, this info completely shocks Su Yang, especially since he was originally told the highest challenge available was the 4-star task. Confused, Su Yang turns to the nun and asks what's up with that. She quickly apologizes and explains that the 5-star task wasn't mentioned because, well, it's just that difficult. No one in the entire Hua Kingdom has even attempted this task for years. In fact, both the temple and the country advise people not to go for it. They don't want potential high-level professionals stuck at level 20 forever because they bit off more than they could chew. Su Yang gets the logic behind their advice. This 5-star task isn't just a challenge, it's a life-altering decision. It's asking him to take down a boss-level monster without any outside help or special equipment. The difficulty is so extreme, it's no wonder most people steer clear of it. But even with all that, Su Yang can't help but be tempted. The thought of gaining 100 spirit points, becoming a demon warrior, and unlocking these mysterious temple privileges really has him hooked. And just like that, Su Yang's mind is made up. He's going for the 5-star task. The nun, though? She's doing everything she can to talk him out of it. She really wants him to take the 3-star task instead, but Su Yang? No, he's already decided. He thanks her for the advice, which makes her smile, until the system chimes in, confirming that Su Yang has officially accepted the 5-star challenge. Her shock? Priceless. She can't believe what she's hearing. She even asks him straight up, "Why would you do that?" And Su Yang, as cool as ever, just says, "It felt right." That's it. He's going purely off his instincts. The nun is thinking, what the? But before she can say anything else, Su Yang reassures her that there's nothing to worry about. He's confident he's going to complete the task, no question. He even tells her to get the temple ready because he's curious about those privileges. Then, like a total Chad, he just walks away, disappearing from sight, leaving the nun standing there completely stunned. After a moment, she snaps out of it, panicking, and orders one of her co-workers to inform the high priest that someone actually dared to take on the 5-star task. Fast forward to Su Yang arriving at the transmission center. The place is packed with hunters, but not by choice. Turns out, an unexpected energy fluctuation has disrupted the portal, leaving everyone stuck in place. It's a rare inconvenience, and it's caught everyone off guard, including Su Yang. But unlike the others, Su Yang's not too bothered by it. He's not in any rush to get to the Cold Moon Forest, so he decides to use the delay to plan out his trip more carefully. Not everyone's as chill about it, though. One person who's especially frustrated by the delay is a city girl named Su Yin. And honestly, she's kind of bad, I'm not gonna lie. But anyway, she's used to the fast pace of city life, so dealing with the inefficiencies of this smaller town is really testing her patience. To make matters worse, she's getting all the wrong attention from the local men, so she warns her sister, Gu Xiaoqian, to stay close and avoid getting separated in the crowd. As Su Yin and her sister, Gu Xiaoqian, stood waiting, something caught Gu Xiaoqian's eye, a familiar figure in the crowd. It was Su Yang, standing calmly in line for the portal, and for some reason, just seeing him there brought a blush to her cheeks. Her heart warmed unexpectedly at the sight. But of course, Su Yin noticed her sister's reaction immediately. Curious, she asked what was up with the sudden interest, which totally flustered Gu Xiaoqian. Trying to downplay it, Gu Xiaoqian explained that Su Yang was just a classmate who had changed professions recently. Nothing more, nothing less. Still, Su Yin found it strange. Why would Su Yang, a supposed novice, be lining up for a portal to the Cold Moon Jungle? That place is no joke. It's a death trap for beginners. Concerned that Su Yang might be rushing into danger without being properly prepared, Gu Xiaoqian felt the urge to warn him. But before either of them could act, the portal resumed operations, and Su Yang was already gone, transported straight into the dangerous jungle. Gu Shaoqian was left standing there in shock, her mind racing with worry for his safety. Meanwhile, on the other side, Su Yang steps into the cold moon jungle like it's no big deal. The first thing he notices? There are no other hunters around. It's eerily quiet, and that sets off alarm bells in his head. He figures that everyone else must have sensed the danger and bailed, leaving him to handle the jungle's threats alone. And sure enough, a monster attacks him from behind. But Su Yang? He's got that ultra instinct. He dodges like it's nothing, hands down looking like Goku in drip mode, just casually avoiding the strike. When he finally turns to face the creature, he realizes it's one of the targets from his quest, though he didn't expect to run into it so soon. Now, dealing with this monster is tricky under normal circumstances. Most people would rely on special equipment or trade items to take it down. But Su Yang? Nah, he's got something better. He pulls out his long, flaming sword and slices through the beast like butter, overkilling it on purpose just to see the sword at full power. The flames cook the creature right on the spot. See, Su Yang had invested a ton of money into this sword, mainly because the sword didn't have a gem slot. He originally planned to use a gem that would let him bypass level requirements, but without a slot, the gem was useless. So, he had to buy a high-level drilling stone to carve one in. But luck wasn't on his side. It kept failing over and over again, draining his bank account from 100 million to 60 million. Painful, right? Still, getting to use the sword now felt like a win. Su Yang decided to look on the bright side of things. Plus, he still had Xiao Ming's old longbow. If he could sell that, maybe he'd recover some of his losses, maybe even sell it back to Xiao Ming himself, which he found kind of funny. But financial worries had to wait. Su Yang was suddenly under attack again. Fortunately, he was prepared. He had a silver-level scroll in his possession, and it activated a powerful barrier around him, capable of absorbing up to 50,000 points of damage. The low IQ monsters didn't stand a chance. They kept attacking the barrier over and over, clueless about what they were really up against. Su Yang let them attack, knowing they were playing right into his hands. Then, with a single devastating swing of his sword, he unleashed a fiery whirlwind that swept through the wolves, wiping out 15 of them in one go. Impressive, right? But that was just the beginning. He still needed to kill 100 wolves to complete his quest, and hunting them down one by one would be way too time-consuming. So, Su Yang pulled out a monster attraction stone from his inventory. This rare item, usually dropped by low-level bosses, had the ability to attract both ordinary and elite monsters within a wide radius straight to him. It was the perfect tool to streamline his mission, and Su Yang knew exactly how to use it. Su Yang activated the monster attraction stone by tossing it into the sky, where it shattered, releasing its magic. Almost immediately, the stone's power became clear. Wolves began swarming from every direction, surrounding Su Yang completely. But running away? That was never an option for Su Yang. He was determined to complete his quest in the most decisive way possible. To prepare, he quickly drank an intermediate spirit potion, boosting his spirit points significantly, and then pulled out a special baptism of fire skill scroll. This scroll allowed him to unleash a devastating area of effect fire attack, wrapping him in a massive pillar of flames that incinerated any monster that dared to get too close. In just a few moments, he hit the goal of slaying 100 wolves. But, thanks to the insane power of the attraction stone, it seemed like he had lured every monster in the forest. Was Su Yang worried? Not at all. He had plenty of scrolls left, so he could easily keep dealing with the monsters swarming him. Meanwhile, in a remote part of the cold moon jungle, a group of hunters was moving through the eerily silent forest. Normally, they'd be fending off creatures left and right, but today, nothing. They had walked 2 kilometers without encountering a single monster, which had them on edge. Something was definitely off. One of the hunters even mentioned seeing a monster run away from them, which is unheard of in this forest. Monsters here are always aggressive, never scared. The group's most experienced hunter quickly pieced it together. Someone had used a monster attraction stone, drawing every creature in the forest to a single point. This tactic? Shameless. It was clear someone wanted all the kills and rewards for themselves, leaving other hunters empty-handed. Determined to confront this selfish hunter, the group picked up the pace, ready to teach this guy a lesson he'd never forget. But just as they were getting closer, a massive surge of power erupted from the direction they were headed. The attack was so strong it reached the skies, and the shockwave? Impossible to ignore. They felt it from a distance. The group cursed. This kind of magic fluctuation could only come from a high-level mage, likely a third-tier magician. Realizing they were way out of their league, they decided to abandon the idea of a confrontation. Whoever this guy was, he was clearly more powerful than they expected, and they'd be better off focusing on something else. Meanwhile, back at the heart of the jungle, Su Yang stood in the aftermath of his fiery assault. The area that had once been overrun by wolves was now empty. Not a single monster or corpse remained. The landscape around him was scorched, with no vegetation in sight for miles. The destruction was immense, and Su Yang knew he had now completed 2/3 of his 5-star task. All that was left was the final boss. A grin spread across Su Yang's face. Despite using several scrolls to get this far, the challenge had been way easier than he'd expected, especially considering how the nun at the temple had freaked out when he accepted the task. Now, with the boss battle ahead, Su Yang couldn't help but feel excited. Maybe this final challenge would finally give him the thrill he'd been looking for. Su Yang headed toward the Cold Moon Cave, the lair of the fearsome Blue Wolf King. This boss was no joke. It usually took a team of at least 3 hunters, all over level 20, to bring it down. But as Su Yang approached, he wasn't the only one with his sights set on the Wolf King. Nearby, a group of 3 hunters was peeking around the corner, also preparing for the fight. They were a well-rounded team. Zhang, the mage, Li San, the tank, and Zhao Wu, the archer. Each of them played a critical role in the upcoming battle, and they were confident, especially Li San, who had just been given a primary strength concoction by Zhang, allowing him to hold out longer in the fight. Zhao Wu, however, wasn't feeling as confident. He had only just changed professions and hadn't even tested his new skills yet, leaving him unsure of his own strength. But Zhang, motivated by the promise of the Wolf King's core, wasn't having it. The core had a 100% chance of dropping a crystal that could be forged into a silver-level staff, a weapon strong enough to carry Zhang all the way to level 40. So, Zhang did everything he could to pump up Zhao Wu, encouraging him to set aside his doubts and focus on the potential rewards. After all, if they could pull this off, their victory would be huge. Just as Zhang was hyping up the group, getting them ready to ambush the Wolf King, Zhao Wu suddenly signaled him to stop. He had spotted something unexpected, a figure approaching the cave. All eyes locked on this mysterious person, and to their surprise, it was Su Yang, confidently walking straight toward the boss's lair. The group instantly panicked, thinking this kid was about to steal their kill. But as they looked closer, they noticed something strange. This guy was young, way too young to be tackling a boss like the Wolf King. And on top of that, he wasn't even wearing any armor. To them, this screamed newbie. Li San, the tank, suggested they warn him, maybe tell him he's biting off more than he can chew. But Zhang? No, he wasn't about to help. He smacked Li San's arm, dismissing the idea as stupid. In his mind, this was the perfect opportunity. Why not let the kid be their free bait? Zhang figured Su Yang would get crushed by the boss's first wave of attacks, leaving them to swoop in, clean up, and take all the rewards. Li San couldn't help but admire Zhang's cunning plan, and they all agreed to wait it out. Unfortunately for them, things didn't go as planned. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble, a powerful quake shaking the area. The cause? Su Yang. His earlier massacre of the wolves had enraged the Wolf King, and now the boss's power surged by 30%. The trio was clueless about why the boss was so mad. Zhang, of course, blamed Su Yang for messing up their plan and ruining everything. Zhang wasn't about to let this go. He leapt out of hiding, yelling at his crew to move fast before the boss fled, convinced the kid would get folded in seconds. But just as he rushed forward, a fierce gust of wind slammed into his face, pulling back his hood and forcing him to stop dead in his tracks. And what did he see? The sight left him speechless. His crew? Same wide-eyed, jaw-dropping reaction. Su Yang, the newbie they thought would be easy bait, had completely flipped the script. With one clean hit, he obliterated the Wolf King. It wasn't even a fight. Su Yang took down the boss like it was nothing. Light work, no struggle, no reaction. The trio realized in that moment. Never judge a book by its cover. This kid was a monster. Meanwhile, Su Yang remained as calm as ever, like the whole thing was just another day at the office. The 5-star quest that was supposed to be insanely difficult? Child's play. After defeating the Wolf King, Su Yang sifted through the loot, hopeful for some valuable rewards. But to his disappointment, the drops were mediocre at best. The items weren't even close to what he was hoping for. Among the loot, the Wolf King's crystal core stood out, but not in a good way. It was practically worthless to him. Still, his quest was complete, so at least he had that going for him. Su Yang decided it was time to head back to the transfer hall, but before he could leave, Zhang overheard his dismissive comments about the crystal core. Seeing a chance, Zhang swallowed his pride and tried his luck. He asked Su Yang if he'd be so kind as to give him the core. But little did Zhang know, Su Yang had heard every word of their earlier conversation. The disrespect, the plan to use him as bait, all of it. So, instead of handing over the core, Su Yang confronted Zhang about his selfish, trashy behavior. Now that things didn't go Zhang's way, he had the nerve to try and play nice? Yeah, Su Yang wasn't having it. Without a second thought, Su Yang shattered the core right in front of Zhang's face, making it crystal clear that he wasn't someone to be stepped on. He dared Zhang to come at him if he wanted a fight. He was more than ready to give him some smoke. But Zhang? Nah. Even though he was humiliated, he didn't do a thing. He just stood there, defeated, and let Su Yang walk away like a boss. Zhang's crew was just as stunned, unable to believe what had just happened. They wished it was all just a bad dream, because who would believe that some rookie kid could kill the Wolf King with one hit? It was unreal. A few moments later, Su Yang successfully returned to Hunter Square, where he was greeted by the same nun from earlier. At first, she assumed he had come back with more questions, but Su Yang wasted no time setting the record straight. He had completed his 5-star task and was ready for his job transfer. The look on her face? Pure shock. I mean, it's understandable. Finishing a 5-star transfer task this quickly is unheard of. She was skeptical at first, but once she checked the system's records, it confirmed everything. Su Yang wasn't lying. He had really done it. This completely shifted the way she saw him. He wasn't just some show-off or reckless idiot. This guy was seriously powerful, to the point where people might think he was cheating. But with the system verifying his success and the fact that he returned unharmed, it was clear just how strong Su Yang really was. As the nun continued staring at him, Su Yang started to feel a little uncomfortable and snapped her out of it by asking if he could begin his job transfer now. After confirming everything, the nun led him back to the statue. But as they walked, her mind was still racing, thinking about Su Yang's insane strength. She realized how beneficial it would be for her temple to have someone like him on their side. Thankfully, she had already informed the priest about Su Yang's talent, reducing the chances of him being recruited by other factions. But as she thought more about him, things started getting a little personal. The nun, despite being, well, a nun, couldn't help but notice how handsome Su Yang was. Her thoughts went wild. She was straight up down bad, imagining all sorts of things, even thinking about asking for his contact info once all this was over. The idea of being with Su Yang was driving her crazy, but for now, she had to set those thoughts aside. They arrived at the statue, and Su Yang wasted no time stepping closer. Almost immediately, a burst of light filled the room, followed by beams of energy descending upon him, one after another. The powerful energy coursed through his body, signaling that he had successfully passed the test. Su Yang was now ready for his job change. Then, something amazing happened. A golden halo materialized around his wrist. This was a job halo, a special reward given to players who complete job transfer tasks. The color of the halo and the bonuses it provided were based on the difficulty of the task. White offered a 2% bonus, green gave 4%, blue provided 6%, purple granted 10%, and orange, the highest tier, offered a staggering 25% boost to basic attributes. Yeah, Su Yang had just unlocked that orange halo, the highest tier. This was beyond what he had expected, and he could feel it. He had leveled up significantly. On top of that, Su Yang officially transitioned into the Demon Warrior class, a hybrid class that excelled in both close combat physical skills and a wide range of magic abilities. This transformation made him even more versatile and powerful. His level cap was now raised to 40. And thanks to the 400,000 experience points he had saved up, Su Yang's level instantly shot up to 34. That meant he now had 210 attribute points to allocate. Wasting no time, Su Yang strategically boosted his strength and spirit to 90 each, while adding 30 points to his speed. This, combined with his flaming sword, made his power skyrocket. His strength surged to over 500, his spirit reached 300, and his speed hit 100, a massive upgrade from where he started. But the rewards didn't stop there. As promised, Su Yang received the Epic Skill Book exclusive to the Demon Warrior class. This book contained the Magic Blade skill, an epic-grade ability that allowed Su Yang to forge a weapon out of condensed mana, dealing full magic damage. And here's the kicker. The damage of the blade increased with his strength and mental attributes, making it ridiculously powerful. Without hesitation, Su Yang decided to test the skill out. He materialized a blade made entirely of mana and swung it. And to his surprise, the blade's capabilities exceeded his expectations. It wasn't just powerful, it could be controlled with mere thought. The blade could even change shape at will, giving Su Yang incredible versatility in both close-quarters combat and ranged attacks. And the best part? The blade could be enlarged infinitely, only limited by Su Yang's mana reserves. It was basically like owning an indestructible heirloom weapon, perfect for any situation and insanely cost-efficient. There was no doubt about it. This was definitely a 5-star job transfer mission. The rewards Su Yang received far surpassed those of any lesser tasks. Now, with his newfound power, Su Yang resolved to pursue even more 5-star challenges in the future. Su Yang's thoughts were interrupted as the nun congratulated him on his incredible achievement. She told him that from now on, his name would be engraved on the temple monument, and he'd officially become a VIP guest of the Job Transfer Temple. Speaking of VIPs, Su Yang was curious, so he went ahead and asked about the specific privileges. But the nun wasn't sure of the details herself and suggested they wait while she checked with her superiors. Turns out there was no need to wait at all. Another figure appeared on the scene, ready to explain everything about the VIP benefits. The newcomer was dressed in an enchanting white gown. It was none other than Bai Ling, the senior priest of the Transfer Temple in Dangling City. Her sudden arrival shocked even the nun, and for good reason. The position of senior priest is just below the highest authority in the temple. Seeing someone of her rank personally show up was rare, but Su Yang's 5-star accomplishment was enough to warrant this special treatment. With Bai Ling now handling things, the nun's role became unnecessary. Bai Ling politely dismissed her, and while the nun left with a smile on her face, deep down she was crying because she still hadn't gotten Su Yang's contact information. Now that the formalities were settled, Bai Ling approached Su Yang and extended her hand for a handshake. At first, Su Yang was a little puzzled by the gesture, hesitating for a moment. But Bai Ling quickly explained that it was the easiest way to transport him to the VIP room for a more detailed discussion. Trusting her intentions, Su Yang took her hand, and in an instant, a magical circle enveloped them, teleporting them to a different part of the temple. Su Yang was amazed by the whole thing. The fact that a senior priest from a third-tier city could use such advanced abilities blew his mind. No wonder people said the strength of the Transfer Temple was unimaginable. Bai Ling noticed Su Yang's impressed expression and humbly downplayed her powers, explaining that her abilities weren't inherently strong. It was just borrowed magic from the temple's sacred statue. She then mentioned something even more surprising. Dangling City had never had a 5-star job changer before. Even in Tianling City, a much bigger and more advanced city, only one person had completed a 5-star task in the past decade. This blew Su Yang's mind. If even Tianling City struggled with this, it made him realize the value of his achievement was far greater than he originally thought. Bai Ling began explaining the benefits that came with being a VIP at the temple, and the rewards were no joke. First off, Su Yang was going to receive a monthly allowance of 10 million in the national currency, an insanely generous sum that showed just how much the temple valued his success. On top of that, he'd been granted black gold status with the EX Alliance, meaning he'd get a 20% discount on all purchases and transactions. This perk alone would make Su Yang's future endeavors way more efficient and way cheaper. Su Yang was in awe of how seamlessly these privileges were integrated into his ID. Everything was automated, making it super easy for him to access his benefits. But Bai Ling wasn't done yet. She had more surprises in store. She explained that Su Yang's exceptional status also meant he had the opportunity to join any A-level guild within the city. Su Yang, always the solo player, immediately asked if joining a guild was required. Bai Ling reassured him that it wasn't obligatory, but she strongly recommended it. Being in a guild would provide him with resources, support, experience buffs or enhancements, and, most importantly, team protection. It would make his growth and strength skyrocket compared to working alone. Su Yang understood her reasoning. Going solo, especially after taking the spotlight with a 5-star task, would make him a target. While he could handle most hunters of his level, dealing with higher-level ones might be a challenge. Having a guild's backing could prevent him from being hunted down by jealous competitors. Plus, with Su Yang's goals set far beyond Dangling City, it made sense to gather all the help he could get. His ambitions to become a dominant figure across all realms made him smile. With that settled, Su Yang asked Bai Ling about the guilds he could choose from. Bai Ling revealed there were only 2 A-level guilds in Dangling City and recommended the Spirit Hunting Guild as the best option for him. However, Su Yang immediately hesitated. He'd recently had some let's just say, unpleasant encounters with members of that guild. So he wasn't too keen on the idea. Wanting to explore other options, Suyang asked Bai Ling about the second guild. That's when she mentioned the Phantom Cloud Guild. Unlike spirit hunting, Phantom Cloud was known for its strength and discretion, keeping a low profile while still being highly competitive. Without much thought, Suyang chose Phantom Cloud. Anything was better than spirit hunting at this point. Bai Ling was surprised by his choice, but she proceeded to handle the membership formalities for him, making the process seamless. However, just as Suyang was about to leave, Bai Ling dropped a bombshell. Phantom Cloud Guild was composed entirely of women. This caught Suyang completely off guard. He hadn't expected that at all. So, in the bustling city of Tianling, we've got the Phantom Cloud Guild, a top tier, a level guild, and its base? It's more like a luxurious mansion, which makes sense given their high status. Now, here's the catch. The guild is exclusively made up of women. Among them is Lin Yu, a level 85 hunter and leader of the Yu Guild, Phantom Cloud. But honestly, Lin spends most of her time freeloading at the A-rank guild's mansion. She's constantly complaining about how boring things are. Now, before we get mixed up, Lin Yu and Lin Yun, yeah, they sound almost identical, but I got you. From now on, I'll refer to the black-haired girl as Lin and the brunette as Yun, alright? Anyway, back to the story. Yun, who's a level 99 hunter and the leader of the A-rank Phantom Cloud Guild, overhears Lin's whining and points out the obvious. Lin isn't even in the A-rank guild. She's just freeloading, so she doesn't exactly have the right to complain about the lack of action. Lin, knowing she's in the wrong, doesn't argue. But here's the thing. She's not interested in going back to her own guild because she finds the responsibilities there way too tedious. Before Yun can respond, another character bursts onto the scene, swinging the door open with some serious force. It's none other than Su Yin, and she's already throwing shade at Yun for skipping out on guild duties, especially when it's her job to welcome new members. Su Yin introduces their newest recruit, Gu Xiaoqian, an ice elementalist. Lin, who seems more interested in appearances than abilities, takes one look at Gu Xiaoqian and is immediately sold. She finds Gu Xiaoqian's abilities satisfactory, but is more focused on how cute she looks. So, Lin just flat out approves her joining the guild without a second thought. Gu Xiaoqian, obviously surprised, barely gets a chance to respond before Yun interrupts, completely engrossed by some information on her system window. Lin, curious, asks what's going on. Yun reveals something big. A male member has joined their guild. This stirs up a huge reaction among the members because, as we all know, Phantom Cloud Guild only accepts female members. Lin's instantly suspicious and wonders if one of Yun's subordinates made a mistake. But Yun quickly clears things up. The new member wasn't a mistake. He was directly assigned by the Transcendence Temple after completing a 5-star task and being designated a VIP. Because of this, he had the privilege to join any A-rank guild of his choosing, leaving Yun with no grounds to deny him. This news leaves the guild members in awe. A guy completing a 5-star task? That's serious business. But the question on everyone's mind is, why didn't he join the Spirit Hunter Guild instead? Yun, being a level-headed leader, decides not to jump to conclusions and suggests they meet this mysterious new member, Suyang, in person. She's ready to step in if he causes any trouble, reassuring the others that if he turns out to be a problem, they'll find a way to get rid of him. Amidst all this, Gu Xiaoqian suddenly reacts. She recognizes Su Yang's name. This catches Yun's attention, and she asks if Gu Xiaoqian knows him. Gu Xiaoqian shares that Su Yang is actually a friend from Dongling City. But here's the kicker. She mentions he had just awakened and should still be at level 1, like her. This makes Yun think it's probably just a coincidence in names. But before they can dig deeper into it, another figure bursts into the room. It's Mu Rongshui, a level 95 hunter and a member of Phantom Cloud Guild. And she's not here with good news. She's here to confirm that the Spirit Hunter Guild had suffered a total defeat in the Black Dragon Dungeon. While the details of their mission remain murky, one thing is clear. It was a disaster. This news sends ripples through the guild, especially since they're planning to challenge the Giant Forest Dungeon soon. It means they'll need to be extra cautious with their strategy to avoid the same fate. But Mu Rongshui isn't just bringing bad news. She's got something juicy to share too. Turns out she'd been checking the auction house and saw Zhao Ming's weapon, Storm's Call, up for sale. And here's where it gets interesting. There was only one bidder at the time, most likely from the Spirit Hunter Guild. So, Mu Rongshui decided to play dirty. She pushed the bid higher and higher, knowing full well what she was doing. and drove the price up to over a dozen billion. Meanwhile, over at the Spirit Hunter Guild, Zhao Ming sneezed. And you know what they say? Someone's probably talking behind his back. But let's be real, Zhao Ming couldn't care less about superstitions right now. His mind was elsewhere, stuck on that damn black dragon and the insane auction where someone drove the price of his Storm's Call weapon through the roof. And who's at his throat about it? Lei Shan, of course. Lei Shan was done with Zhao Ming's whining, especially since the auction had drained them of 14 billion, a massive blow to the guild's funds. To make matters worse, the seller couldn't even be contacted through private message. The news of Zhao Ming's weapon exploding in the auction house had already spread like wildfire, and now their guild was the laughingstock of Tianling City. Lei Shan had had enough, and in typical Lei Shan fashion, he decided to literally kick some sense into Zhao Ming. The kick was so brutal that it disintegrated whatever cheeks Zhao Ming had left, leaving him unable to stand. With Zhao Ming out of commission, Lei Shan and Qian Yuan headed to their next meeting, a face-off with the members of the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion. These guys were not happy. Seated across a long table, they were ready to talk business, especially the white-haired guy leading the charge, Zhou Tai. He's a level 110 hunter, a 5-star bloodthirsty warrior, and the strategy group leader for the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion. Zhou Tai wasn't messing around. He asked Lei Shan and Qian Yuan straight up if he was hearing things right, because no way were they accusing his team of messing up the strategy for the Black Dragon Fortress raid. Zhou Tai was practically offended. The Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion had cleared that dungeon 5 times. They had summarized and verified every step of their strategy meticulously. So, if something went wrong, it had to be on Lei Shan and his crew, either a skill issue or they didn't follow the plan step by step. Despite the heat in the room, Lei Shan didn't back down. He insisted that their guild was known for being careful and strategic with boss raids. They were once an undefeated guild, after all. Lei Shan assured Zhou Tai that they followed the strategy from start to finish. But here's the kicker. The Black Dragon's behavior was totally off. Its patterns didn't match the strategy that was given to them at all. He made it clear he wasn't questioning the pavilion's professionalism, but something was seriously wrong. He wouldn't sacrifice his entire guild's main force just to blackmail them. But Lei Shan's defense only made Lu Ci, a level 103 shadow assassin, laugh at them. Lu Ci mocked the Spirit Hunter Guild for being utterly useless. They had the strategy handed to them, and yet they got wrecked by a level 99 boss. And now they're blaming it on the Heavenly Mechanisms exploration team? Lu Ci's arrogance was palpable, and the disrespect was real. Lei Shan was not about to let that slide. He glared at Lu Ci, telling him to watch his mouth, but Lu Ci wasn't backing down either. He doubled down, calling them weak and telling them to get good or forfeit. The tension was thick, but before things could escalate any further, Zhou Tai, too old and experienced for this kind of nonsense, stepped in and broke off the brewing fight. Zhou Tai made it clear the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion was all about integrity. They'd never sell faulty information. To prove it, Zhou Tai offered to send the exploration team back into the Black Dragon Fortress to retrace their steps. If there were any errors in the strategy, the pavilion would take full responsibility and cover all of the Spirit Hunter Guild's losses. But if the strategy was sound, then the problem was on Lei Shan, and the pavilion wouldn't be responsible anymore. It was a solid plan, and the Spirit Hunter Guild agreed. They'd send 4 members from the Heavenly Mechanism strategy team to investigate the dungeon alongside Lei Shan. The other members didn't object, so the deal was set. But just as the meeting was about to wrap up, the room's atmosphere shifted. Dark green mist began to fill the air, and both Lei Shan and Qian Yuan immediately went on high alert, thinking an enemy had arrived. The tension spiked as the ominous figure entered the room. But Zhou Tai, he stayed calm and collected, walking right past Lei Shan and Qian Yuan. He told them to relax before they embarrassed themselves. The man before them wasn't an enemy. He was Chun Luan, a level 115 5-star necromancer from the main headquarters of the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion. So, Chun Luan was there for a reason. He'd heard about the plan to raid the Black Dragon Fortress and was ticked off that Zhou Tai hadn't informed him, despite specific orders to do so. Zhou Tai immediately apologized, explaining that he didn't want to trouble Master Chen, since this was mostly just a follow-up service by the exploration team. But Chun Luan didn't care about their reasoning. He had already made up his mind to join the raid himself. Why? Because he was obsessed with killing the Black Dragon, and more specifically, with its soul, which he could use to strengthen his treasure. And, yeah, he was a little too excited about it. Chun Luan stuck his tongue out like some kind of pervert, causing everyone in the room to cringe at his bizarre behavior. Despite the awkwardness, he couldn't stop grinning, like a full-on all-might grin, showing off his true personality. To him, whether they cleared the dungeon or got wiped out didn't matter. In fact, if they relied too heavily on strategy and still failed, Chunluan figured they deserved whatever consequences came their way. He was ready to see them pay the price. Meanwhile, Su Yang finally managed to relax, lying in bed later that night. But, of course, his peace was short-lived. His guild's chat channel was blowing up with people talking about him, which only irritated him. Thankfully, he was able to block the notifications and get a moment of peace. Just as he was about to drift off, a notification pinged on his screen. It was an update from the auction house about the Storm's Call weapon he had listed. And guess what? Only 2 bidders were involved, but their back and forth had stretched out over dozens of pages, driving the price up to 14 billion. That's 40% above the weapon's highest average price. Su Yang silently thanked the so-called Ice Witch for pushing the bid so high. Her competition had really inflated the final price. But that wasn't the only perk. As a distinguished member of the EX Alliance's Black Gold tier, Su Yang was exempt from auction house fees. Plus, he received a 5% bonus from the final sale price, making his total earnings a staggering 15 billion. With this kind of cash, Su Yang could finally relax. No more worries about working a part-time job or living the 9 to 5 grind. This newfound wealth? Yeah, it was addictive. The next day, Su Yang woke up early, knowing that he couldn't afford to be complacent. His part-time boss cooldown had reset, and he learned that a new challenge was headed his way. This time, it was the renowned exploration team. These guys were known as dungeon killers, having cleared countless dungeons and created top-tier strategies from their experiences. Many of them were 5-star professionals above level 100, which meant this was related to the Black Dragon Fortress disaster he'd caused recently. And they were only bringing 6 members, which told Su Yang one thing. They were very confident in their abilities. Su Yang wasn't going to hold back. He prepared to give them the toughest fight possible, as the Black Dragon Athos. Fully transformed back into the terrifying Black Dragon, Su Yang surveyed his domain. The elite monsters that had died in the previous battle were resurrected, though that didn't surprise him. After all, the Black Dragon Fortress was a diamond-level secret realm, which could refresh like a game. Only secret realms of a star level or higher couldn't be repeated. As he scanned the area, Su Yang's attention was drawn to a silver-haired elf who was standing nearby. From Athos memories, Su Yang remembered that the Black Dragon regarded this elf as a beautiful companion. And honestly, Su Yang couldn't disagree. The dragon had good taste, but he couldn't help but wonder how this elf had been abducted while he wasn't connected. The Black Dragon usually followed the established rules. Still, there were more pressing matters. Su Yang shifted his focus as the exploration team made their entrance. Just like last time, he activated his Dragon Eye ability to scope them out. Sure enough, there were 5 5th-level professionals confidently approaching, and among them was none other than Lei Shan, back from the Spirit Hunter Guild, clearly there to redeem himself after the disaster they faced earlier. Su Yang couldn't help but admire the professionalism of the exploration team's after-sale service. Their combat power was way stronger than Lei Shan's entire guild, which meant they posed a bigger threat this time around. But Su Yang wasn't worried. As long as they didn't seize the Dragon Slayer's heart, they wouldn't be able to inflict serious damage on him. Su Yang wasn't about to take any chances. He knew better than to underestimate 5th-level professionals. They might be predictable on paper, but their adaptability and strength could throw even the best plans off course. So, to test the waters, Su Yang made a tactical move. He ordered his dragon warriors to launch a coordinated assault on the intruders. But there was one dragon warrior he held back, keeping it in reserve for a special purpose he had in mind. Meanwhile, the exploration team had been cutting through the dungeon without breaking a sweat, easily dispatching the monsters they encountered. At this point, they hadn't noticed anything out of the ordinary, which led Lu Xi to start mocking the spirit hunters. He was convinced they were just stirring up trouble for no reason. But the others weren't so quick to jump to conclusions. They reminded Lu Xi that they hadn't even made it halfway through the dungeon yet. The real test would come when they reached the boss. Right on cue, they spotted a massive cloud of dust barreling toward them, an unmistakable sign that something big was heading their way, fast. The killing intent was palpable, and within moments, they realized just how serious the threat was. It wasn't just one enemy, it was a whole army of them, closing in at top speed. Without hesitation, the team braced for battle. Lei Shan seized the moment to point out that this was exactly what had happened to his guild, proving that he wasn't lying about the danger. The only difference? This time, there were even more monsters. Zhou Tai acknowledged the unexpected threat, but remained calm. He confidently declared that this wouldn't be enough to stop their team. True to his word, Zhou Tai quickly issued orders, and his team executed them with precision. Each member used their specialized skills. Shadow Render chipped away at the monster's health. Mountain Barrier blocked and trapped them, and Holy Light Blessing boosted Zhou Tai's strength, making sure his violent strike would deliver the final blow. The monsters fell like dominoes, wiped out efficiently. It was a textbook example of how the pros do it. Even Su Yang, watching from a distance, couldn't deny their expertise. These guys were legit. Their teamwork and coordination were on another level, like something out of a legend, immortals descending to show off their strength. And the mysterious mage in their ranks? He hadn't even lifted a finger yet. Su Yang realized this battle was going to be far more challenging than his encounters with the Spirit Hunter Guild. If he wanted to win, he'd have to get personally involved. So, without missing a beat, Su Yang stretched out his wings and dipped away from the scene, just like he had done before. His minions cheered as he disappeared into the distance, sensing something familiar about this. Of course, they didn't remember. Dungeon reset rules wiped their memories of previous runs. But one entity didn't forget: the elf. The silver-haired elf, who had been watching from her prison, grew increasingly confused. She had seen the black dragon many times before, but this behavior was different, more aggressive than anything she had witnessed since her capture. What had changed? Back with the exploration team, Lei Shan tried to smooth things over by complimenting Zhou Tai's crew, calling them one of the best strategy groups under the Sky Pavilion banner. He also pointed out how the current challenges they were facing differed from what the strategy guides had indicated, reinforcing that he wasn't trying to mislead anyone. Zhou Tai acknowledged Lei Shan's concerns, assuring him that they would investigate any discrepancies once the dungeon was complete. But Master Chen? He was unimpressed, scoffing at Lei Shan's guild pride. To him, the monsters they had encountered so far were nothing but trifles. He derisively questioned how a guild that prided itself on never failing could struggle with such weak enemies. The mockery hit hard, but Lei Shan wasn't one to let disrespect slide. He clapped back, this time speaking in Japanese, urging Master Chen to maintain the decorum expected of a leader. That's when Lei Shan realized he had massively messed up. Master Chen was not like the others he'd faced. This old-timer wasn't planning to hold back his rage, and he was ready to devour Lei Shan on the spot if he kept nagging like a fool. Thankfully, Zhou Tai stepped in just in time, diffusing the situation with a calm smile. He suggested that Master Chen's harsh words were just a joke, though it was clear that wasn't the case. Zhou Tai's intervention wasn't out of kindness. It was smart business. He couldn't let Master Chen lose control because harming Lei Shan would jeopardize future contracts and the team's reputation. Lei Shan was shook, so rattled by the intensity of Master Chen's killing intent that he could barely move. In that moment, he truly believed his life was over. But rather than crush his spirit, this encounter only fueled Lei Shan's desire to see these guys get wrecked by the Black Dragon. And almost as if on cue, the Black Dragon made its dramatic entrance, catching everyone off guard and proving Lei Shan's earlier warnings to be true. Still, this exploration team wasn't about to panic. As a top-tier group of professionals, they couldn't afford to mess around. Zhou Tai quickly rallied his team, coordinating a series of combined abilities to maximize their attack efficiency. They knew the Black Dragon's attack patterns and were confident they could cheese their way through the fight using those mechanics. But things didn't go as planned. Despite their knowledge and well-timed attacks, they realized none of them were dealing any significant damage. This caught them off guard. Meanwhile, Su Yang, in his Black Dragon form, wasn't surprised at all. He knew from the start that his damage reduction talent would make it nearly impossible for them to hurt him. Even so, these guys weren't backing down. They kept trying to chip away at his health, so Su Yang decided to strike back. He launched an attack, but as expected, the hunters dodged it with ease. That was exactly what Su Yang wanted. The initial strike was just a diversion to line up a real attack on their backline, catching the exploration team off guard again. But Zhou Tai was quick on his feet. He jumped into action and protected the backline, stopping Su Yang from wiping out the squishier members of the team. This created an opportunity for Lei Shan, who confidently aimed his most powerful execution skill, a skill that had taken down bosses in Starlight tier dungeons. Lei was sure this would hurt the dragon. Unfortunately for him, reality didn't match his expectations. Lu Ci realized too late that their attacks were barely scratching the Black Dragon, and the boss's damage reduction was no joke. Just as Lu Ci considered retreating, The black dragon's tail hit him with full force, almost killing him on the spot. If it weren't for the barrier master's shield, he'd have been finished. The team rushed to his aid, ensuring he could recover and get back in the fight. But Su Yang wasn't letting up. He was ready to unleash his breath of annihilation, aiming to end this fight right here, right now. The team was shocked. They expected the black dragon to use this ultimate attack only when its HP was below 70%, but it seemed the boss wasn't playing by their rules. Hellish flames engulfed the team, but they managed to survive thanks to their own ultimate skill, Sanctuary, which reduced damage taken by 90% and healed them for 10 seconds. Su Yang wasn't threatened. He saw this as more of a challenge. He knew that Sanctuary was the last defense skill the barrier master had for the day, meaning the next breath of annihilation would finish them off for good. The exploration team, however, was starting to get worried. Some of the members even wondered if the boss had gained intelligence. The way the black dragon was reading their tactics and exploiting their weaknesses didn't feel random. But Zhou Tai wasn't buying it. He told his team to cut the assumptions. This was a diamond tier boss. It wasn't possible for it to suddenly grow a brain and outsmart them. Master Chun, on the other hand, had had enough of these useless trash fumbling around. Growing impatient, he decided to take matters into his own hands. As a high-level necromancer, he called forth one of his most powerful summons, the Bone Dragon Marses. Out of nowhere, a bone dragon appeared to challenge Su Yang. This surprised even Su Yang, as necromancers were rare, and a high-level one could summon creatures as strong as dungeon bosses. The bone dragon looked like it could go toe-to-toe with him. Su Yang decided it was time to test its strength. As expected, the bone dragon wasn't just for show, it was strong. Realizing a hand-to-hand fight would take too long, Su Yang used his wings to push the bone dragon back and create some distance. But Mars's wasn't finished yet. The bone dragon unleashed its own breath attack, and when it collided with Su Yang's, the shockwaves rippled through the dungeon. The exploration team stood in awe of Master Chen's power. His summon could easily hold its own against Athos, the black dragon boss of the dungeon. Su Yang, too, was impressed, but only for a moment. He hadn't gone all out yet. Seeing the bone dragon no longer intrigue him, Su Yang decided to crank things up to maximum power. He unleashed the full force of his breath of annihilation, and hellish flames consumed the bone dragon, leaving behind nothing but charred bones. But just as Su Yang thought it was over, the bone dragon resurrected itself. Instantly, Master Chen's capabilities as a necromancer were no joke. As long as fresh corpses were available, he could resurrect his summon infinitely. The bone dragon, now fully recovered, caught Su Yang off guard. It swept him off his feet, pinning him to the ground and hitting him with a direct breath attack that drained his HP fast. Su Yang realized he was in real danger if this kept up. So, he whipped his tail to break free and used his wings to fly away, assuming the bone dragon couldn't follow, considering its wings were nothing but bare bones. So, the bone dragon couldn't fly, but that didn't mean Master Chun was giving up. He ordered it to attack from a distance, but Su Yang easily dodged the strikes. Su Yang wasn't just dodging for fun, though. He was strategically positioning himself to go after the real target, Master Chun himself. Master Chun quickly realized what was happening and commanded the bone dragon to return and defend him. But Su Yang was way ahead of him. This was all part of the plan. Su Yang didn't actually plan to attack from range. Instead, he used the bone dragon's body like a springboard to launch himself straight at Master Chun. It was a brilliant move, and Chun took the hit head-on like it was some kind of tax he had to pay. Surprisingly, Master Chun still had a decent amount of HP left, a miracle for someone in such a supposedly fragile class. Turns out, the barrier master came in clutch, sharing half the damage among the entire team. Shout out to the real MVP. Without that barrier, half the team would have been obliterated by now. But all of this wasn't for nothing. The team wasn't just getting smacked around for fun. They were buying time for Lu Ci's return, and they had calculated that he should be back any second now. What they didn't calculate, though, was that Su Yang could understand everything they were saying. Realizing what was happening, Su Yang quickly put two and two together. Lu Ci was definitely out there retrieving the Dragon Slayer's heart. But it was too late for the team. Suddenly, clouds of dust appeared, closing the distance fast. The hunters thought it was Lu Ci coming back, which gave them hope. But Su Yang? He wanted them to think exactly that. He'd been playing chess from the start, getting their hopes up just to crush them all over again. And when the figure running toward them finally emerged, it wasn't Lu Ci. It was one of Su Yang's minions, the dragon warrior he had held back earlier. the one who had secured the Dragon Slayer's heart for Su Yang and not anyone else. The sight left everyone, especially Zhou Tai, in disbelief. They had dismissed Su Yang as just another dungeon boss, but now they were watching their entire strategy crumble before their eyes. The creature they thought was just a game boss had shown chilling intelligence, moving them around like pawns in its master plan. And with the heart of the Dragon Slayer now in Su Yang's possession, the group's hope of victory completely evaporated. But things were about to get even crazier. When Su Yang's Black Dragon made contact with the Dragon Slayer's heart, a blinding light surged through his body, and an overwhelmingly powerful aura emanated from him. What the hunters didn't know was that this contact had triggered hidden conditions within the dungeon. The Black Dragon Fortress, previously a Diamond Tier secret realm, was transforming, escalating into a Starlight Tier fortress. This was no longer a regular dungeon. This was now a challenge that could wipe out entire guilds, let alone a small party of hunters. Back at the Temple of Transformation, the senior priest and her accompanying nun were in full panic mode. They felt an unusual surge of spiritual energy radiating from the hidden realm. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The senior priest hadn't anticipated this kind of phenomenon, and the sudden, mysterious nature of it left her feeling deeply uneasy. Whatever this was, it could mean massive upheavals in the world. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, the hunters were stunned. The idea of a hidden realm evolving like this was unheard of, and to make matters worse, even the Black Dragon they were fighting seemed to have leveled up. His entire drip had upgraded, and the hunters knew exactly what was coming next. They were about to get absolutely destroyed. Amidst the chaos, Su Yang was reveling in his newfound strength. The surge of power had boosted him all the way to level 100, advancing him to the early growth stage and significantly increasing his attributes. But the real kicker? Su Yang had unlocked a brand new Starlight Tier skill, Purifying Inferno Prison. This skill was an absolute game-changer. It dealt a ridiculous 1,000% in both magical and physical damage. But that wasn't even the most terrifying part. The skill had a hidden ability. It could prevent hunters from resurrecting if they were killed by it. That meant Su Yang could decide who came back from the dead and who stayed gone forever. In a world where death was usually just a temporary setback, this skill was a game-changer. Su Yang now held the power to make death permanent. Su Yang was left with questions about what had just happened, so he turned to the system for answers. The system clarified that the massive power surge was all because of the Dragon Slayer's heart he had obtained. Su Yang pieced it together. The Black Dragon was originally meant to be at a Starlight level, but the heart had been suppressing its natural power, causing it to function at a reduced capacity. Hence the downgrade. Now that the heart was in his possession, the system recalibrated the difficulty, upgrading it to what it was supposed to be all along. With the dragon now reaching its early growth stage, Su Yang didn't fully understand what that meant yet. But one thing was clear. The hunters? They were no longer a threat to him. As Su Yang processed this revelation, he caught a glimpse of Lu Ci rushing toward him. Lu had returned, ready to report his failure to find the Dragon Slayer's heart. But when he saw the transformed dragon, his face said it all. He was stunned. His mind raced, trying to figure out what had happened. But those thoughts disappeared the moment he saw that the dragon was holding the heart. Zhou Tai saw the look on Lu Ci's face and quickly realized what he was about to do. He shouted for Lu to stop and come back to their ranks. But Lu Ci, being the overconfident idiot he was, ignored the warning. He charged at the dragon, thinking there was no way it could keep up with his speed. Big mistake. The Black Dragon absolutely wrecked him, killing him for real this time while his teammates could only watch helplessly from the sidelines. With the situation spiraling out of control, Lei Shan urgently turned to Zhou Tai, asking what their next move was. But Zhou Tai hesitated, knowing full well that Starlight-level bosses usually required a team of 10 to 25 awakened players to even stand a chance. With their small team, their odds of victory were next to zero. He knew the only smart move now was to retreat. This decision hit Zhou Tai hard. It was a blow to his pride, but he understood that survival was the priority. Without hesitation, he led the charge toward the exit, signaling for everyone to follow. Master Chun, however, was having none of it. He found Zhou Tai's cautious approach amusing and openly mocked him. But Zhou Tai wasn't fazed. He knew engaging the dragon under these conditions would be suicide. His cool-headed leadership showed why he was in charge. He prioritized his team's safety over personal glory. Even Su Yang, watching from above, respected Zhou Tai's decision. But respect didn't mean he was going to let them get away so easily. With a single beat of his wings, Su Yang launched himself at the fleeing hunters. His arrival was like thunder, slamming into the ground with devastating force and blocking their only escape route. Zhou Tai didn't lose his composure, though. He quickly directed his team to amplify their defensive capabilities, hoping to create enough of an opening to break through and escape. But Su Yang wasn't going to make it easy for them. The barrier master had already used up all of his trump cards, and Su Yang knew it. Without wasting any time, Su Yang unleashed his breath of annihilation. And this time, with his new Starlight-level strength, the attack was even more devastating. The hunter's defenses were shattered. Lei Shan and the healer were down, out of the fight for good. That left only Zhou Tai and the barrier master barely holding on, their health and mana dangerously low. They knew escape was no longer an option. In a last-ditch effort, Zhou Tai ordered his team to secure their valuable items within their infinite rings, hoping to at least minimize their losses. But this retreat didn't sit well with Master Chen. He wasn't about to concede defeat to a boss he had killed 1,000 times before. Even though the dragon had leveled up to a Starlight tier, Chen still believed he could kill it again. Confident in his abilities, Master Chen decided it was time to go all out. He summoned his most powerful skill, the Cloud Water Legion. This necromancer ability calls forth all the dead creatures on the battlefield, granting them infinite duration until Chen's mana or health depletes. In a desperate move, Master Chen unleashed his ultimate summon, the Cloud Water Legion, hoping that sheer numbers would be enough to turn the tide against Athos. But things didn't go as planned. The black dragon casually swept its massive tail, wiping out the undead army with ease, leaving only the bone dragon standing. The bone dragon lunged at Athos with a blast of its dragon breath, but this time, Athos remained completely unfazed. The attack no longer had any effect on him. With a display of dominance, Athos disrespected the bone dragon by slamming its head into the ground, silencing Master Chen's defiance in an instant. But Master Chen, ever the egomaniac, regained his composure and flashed an ugly grin, clinging to one thing. Hunters were immortal in this world. Even if he lost now, he would simply respawn and come back to torment Athos over and over until he finally devoured the dragon's soul. Su Yang had heard enough. Master Chen's arrogance and disrespect pushed Su Yang to make an example out of him. One that would send a message to the entire world. Never underestimate a dragon of his caliber. Without hesitation, Su Yang activated his newly acquired skill, Purifying Inferno Prison. A catastrophic wave of fire and magic erupted from Athos, annihilating every hunter in the vicinity. They vanished instantly, as if they had been nothing more than illusions. All except Master Chen. Even as he was engulfed by the flames, Chen continued to taunt Athos, believing his immortality would save him. But Su Yang had different plans. He informed Master Chen, with cold finality, that there wouldn't be a next time. Suddenly, Chen's twisted grin disappeared, and panic set in. He realized something was horribly wrong. He had been standing there far longer than usual, and his HP had hit 0 long ago. So why hadn't the system transferred him out yet? Why was his body falling apart? His thoughts raced, but deep down he already knew the answer. As time seemed to slow down, Su Yang delivered the truth that Chen had been avoiding. He would not resurrect. Chen's final screams echoed briefly through the dungeon before he disintegrated completely. For good. Su Yang stood victorious, having gained a massive 9.9 million experience points from the battle, instantly leveling up from 34 to 40 with 5.99 million XP left over. A few moments later, back at the somber headquarters of the exploration team, a heavy silence filled the air. Each member struggled to come to terms with the disaster they had just endured. The silence was abruptly broken when the senior priest burst into the room with grave news about Master Chen. As they had feared, there was no sign of Chen's resurrection at the guild's main headquarters. But it got worse. All records of Master Chen had vanished from their system entirely, suggesting either a deliberate erasure or something even more terrifying: complete death. This revelation hit everyone like a brick. If it were true, it meant that the Black Dragon not only ignored the usual level protection mechanics, but it had also forcibly erased a hunter's existence. The thought sent a chill down Zhou Tai's spine. Realizing they were dealing with something far beyond their control, Zhou Tai knew they couldn't handle this situation on their own. His only option now was to compensate the Spirit Hunter Guild for their losses and leave the bigger decisions to the higher-ups. But there was one detail that gnawed Zhou Tai. Out of all the hunters killed by Athos' attack, only Master Chen had been wiped out permanently. Everyone else had been spared. Why? Could it be a specific mechanism? Or, worse, had the Black Dragon chosen to let the others live? Either way, the implications were terrifying. Meanwhile, back at Su Yang's residence, he was finally taking a much-needed break. The battles had been exhausting, mentally and physically. His opponents from the exploration team had been far stronger than those from the Spirit Hunter Guild, requiring much more effort to defeat. But Su Yang wasn't complaining. His hard work had paid off, proving that the exploration team was worthy of its S-class ranking. Among the loot he acquired from the battle, 2 items stood out in particular. The first was a Starlight tier dagger named Shadow's Bloodthirst. This exceptional weapon not only boosted his stats, but also had 2 unique abilities. The first ability, Shadow's Body, granted Su Yang temporary invisibility and a 50% increase in speed. The second, Compassion Mark, allowed him to mark a target and deliver a stealth attack with a devastating 300% damage boost. Among Su Yang's incredible loot, the second standout item was a legendary skill scroll called 5-Charge Storm Thunderblade. This skill was just as epic as its name, allowing it to charge up to 5 times to unleash a devastating storm of blades. With each charge, the power multiplied, making it a terrifying force to behold. Su Yang couldn't believe his luck. First, he snagged a Diamond tier weapon, and now he was upgrading to a Starlight tier 1. But the best part? Unlike the Call of the Storm, there were no restrictions on using the Shadow's Bloodthirst dagger, so Su Yang could equip it immediately, boosting his combat power on the spot. And as for the 5-Charge Storm Thunderblade skill, it was so strong it could instantly kill a 4th-tier hunter. Plus, it came with 0 usage restrictions, making it the perfect tool for when Su Yang needed to take out his enemies in style. Su Yang was practically buzzing with excitement over these new gains. Now that he had reached level 40, it was time for his second awakening. With all the extra experience he had, it made no sense to wait. The earlier, the better. But before heading off to the transfer temple for his awakening, Su Yang wanted to confirm something. Was Chun Luan, the undead necromancer he defeated, actually dead? So he queried the system. Not only did the system confirm Chun Luan's demise, but it commended Su Yang for eliminating him. The system had analyzed Chun and deemed him a significant threat, one who could have grown even more dangerous if he had gotten his hands on the Dragon Slayer's heart. But the system wasn't done. It revealed a critical rule Su Yang hadn't known. As a part-time boss, if he were defeated by hunters, he would die immediately. This revelation hit hard. The stakes were much higher than he'd initially realized. Facing high-tier hunters wasn't just risky, it could end his life in an instant. Still, with the overwhelming strength he had displayed during the previous battle, Su Yang felt confident the hunters would think twice before challenging him again anytime soon. That being said, something else popped into Su Yang's mind. He remembered that Starlight tier bosses, like Athos, were called true spirit creatures and had their own consciousness. So, he asked the system if the Black Dragon had developed its own intelligence when he wasn't controlling it. The system quickly clarified that the Black Dragon had not gained intelligence due to its unique status as a system-controlled boss. When the host, Su Yang, wasn't connected, the dragon would operate strictly according to pre-established rules and behavior patterns. And in case Su Yang ever defeated the part-time boss, the system would automatically assign him a higher-level boss with even stronger capabilities, keeping the challenges fresh and limitless. This news excited Su Yang more than ever. The system was way more engaging and powerful than he had initially imagined. And defeating the Black Dragon wasn't impossible, especially since he had a pendant that could make things easier. This pendant was no ordinary item. Not only was it a powerful tool for slaying dragons, but it also had an unsealed attribute that could be unlocked with the right item. Its abilities were mind-blowing. A 50% boost in his spirit points and a 100% boost in his strength. And if that wasn't enough, the pendant allowed Su Yang to ignore a dragon's racial talent and increase his damage against them by a whopping 500%. But the most exciting part? It had the potential to summon the blood soul of an ancient hero, an unstoppable ally that could only be called upon after slaying a dragon on his own. Although the pendant required Su Yang to accumulate charges for each dragon he killed. And right now, he had none. He was determined not to pass up this opportunity. He was convinced that the blood soul referred to a dragon-slaying hero, a figure of immense combat strength, far exceeding even a 5th-level professional. With his super minion by his side, there would be no one Su Yang would have to fear anymore. He resolved to defeat the Black Dragon as soon as possible so that he could switch out his part-time boss role and unlock the powerful summon. But first things first, he needed to advance to a second-tier hunter to fully utilize his new powers. So, Su Yang set off for the Transformation Temple. Meanwhile, outside the Transformation Temple, the sight of Bai Ling, the senior priestess, standing at the entrance had passers-by buzzing with curiosity. Her beauty was striking, and her graceful presence turned heads everywhere. People couldn't help but wonder, who was she waiting for? It wasn't every day that a priestess of her rank would stand outside waiting for someone. The crowd began to whisper, full of admiration and envy, longing for that level of attention themselves. So, the person Bai Ling was waiting for turned out to be none other than Su Yang. As he approached, Bai Ling greeted him warmly, even calling him hero, which caught Su Yang off guard. Surprised, he asked her about the title and how she knew he was coming. With a proud smile, Bai Ling explained that the temple's transformation statue emits a guiding light whenever the temple's VIP is about to arrive, and there was only one VIP in all of East Spirit City. As for the hero title, she said it was just something the temple requires, so he didn't need to think too much about it. Though Su Yang understood, deep down he felt a bit cringy. Hero? It sounded way too edgy for his liking, but he let it slide. After all, he was there for one thing, his awakening. With that, Su Yang accepted another 5-star transformation task. This time, the challenge was particularly tough. He had to solo clear a silver-tier dungeon and defeat the boss within 3 minutes of encountering it. Normally, these instances required a full team due to their difficulty, but for someone like Su Yang, just another challenge he was more than capable of handling. Bai Ling, ever impressed by his bravery, commended Su Yang for accepting another 5-star task, once again calling him hero. Cue the internal cringe. Not wanting to linger on the title, Su Yang quickly changed the subject, asking if she had a map of the nearby silver-tier instances. Luckily, Bai Ling had just what he needed. She handed over a map that not only detailed the locations of silver-tier dungeons, but also included info on bronze and gold-tier dungeons, complete with refresh times. Su Yang couldn't help but smile. This was a treasure trove for his future dungeon-crawling plans. Just as he was about to leave, Bai Ling stopped him to offer a word of caution. She warned him about a recent accident in one of the dungeons where the difficulty had suddenly spiked, resulting in a professional hunter disappearing. On top of that, she told him that the low-level wilderness areas had become overcrowded with players lately, sparking bloody conflicts over dungeon access. She urged Su Yang to be extra cautious in his upcoming ventures. Su Yang thanked her for the heads-up, but with his current power, he felt confident that finding and clearing 2 silver-tier dungeons wouldn't be a problem. But things didn't go quite as smoothly as he expected. The dungeons he targeted were packed with players, and it would take hours to wait for his turn. The real challenge wasn't even clearing the dungeons. It was finding an available one. After unsuccessfully checking 8 dungeons, Su Yang started wondering if these silver-tier dungeons were even worth the effort. His luck seemed to be balancing out. After all the insane loot he'd gotten recently, it felt like the universe was correcting the scales. Still, Su Yang wasn't about to give up. His search eventually brought him to the Cave of Suffering, a dungeon hidden within a canyon. But, to his disappointment, it was just as overcrowded as the others. He was about to leave when he spotted 2 familiar faces in the crowd, Gu Xiaoqian and, unfortunately, Wang Fei. The 2 of them were in the middle of an argument over who had the right to enter the dungeon. Seeing Wang Fei was almost enough to make Su Yang want to leave, but then he remembered that Gu Xiaoqian was part of the Yuyan Guild, a sister guild of the Phantom Cloud Guild. There was no way he was going to let some loser like Wang Fei mess with him, especially when they were acquainted. Plus, this might be his chance to secure a spot in the dungeon. Meanwhile, on Gu Xiaoqian's side, things were getting tense. Wang Fei's group was starting to show unwanted attention toward her, classic incel behavior, making her feel uneasy. But she wasn't alone. She had solid backup. Helan, a level 61 hybrid-class ranger swordsman who wasn't someone to be trifled with. She was already a 3rd-tier awakener, and her combat prowess was no joke. Seeing Helan's presence made Wang Fei's confidence crumble. He quickly retreated behind one of his allies, a massive, hulking 3rd-tier hunter who looked like he'd been on steroids since birth. But don't let his looks fool you. This guy was a skilled martial artist, and he wasn't afraid to throw hands. Wasting no time, he escalated the situation, warning Helan that if they tried to enter the dungeon now, it would mean a fight. And he didn't stop there. He made it clear that if it came down to it, he and his crew would jump on all of them, and they wouldn't even spare the newbies. Helan was left speechless. She knew they were outmatched. Her group consisted mostly of low-level newcomers, and if a fight broke out, they'd be done for. But backing down now? That would only embolden these guys to take advantage of the situation. So, Helan was ready to make the first move, hoping to gain an edge. But the big guy in front of her wasn't just brawn. His sharp observation skills quickly picked up on Helan's intent. Luckily, before a fight could break out, Su Yang stepped in, casually claiming the dungeon for himself. This took both groups by surprise. At first glance, Su Yang didn't seem like anything special, just another nobody. Gu Xiaoqian, however, was both shocked and relieved to see him. The last time she saw him was at the teleportation center, and while she was glad he was safe, she couldn't help but worry. Why was he provoking two heavy hitters? Wang Fei, recognizing Su Yang, was less than thrilled. He couldn't hide his irritation and immediately confronted him, demanding to know why Su Yang always seemed to be in his way. Su Yang just smirked and flipped the accusation right back at him, saying Wang Fei was like an annoying fly that kept buzzing around uninvited. That taunt hit a nerve, but Wang Fei knew better than to lose his cool, especially with his big guy backing him up. Confident in his muscles' abilities, Wang Fei mockingly suggested that Su Yang should kneel down and beg for forgiveness if he wanted to leave unharmed. But Su Yang? He wasn't even listening to these clowns. He walked right past them and warmly greeted Gu Xiaoqian, completely ignoring the big guy's threat. Helan, still confused by Su Yang's boldness, turned to Gu Xiaoqian, asking who Su Yang was. Gu Xiaoqian explained that Su Yang was an old classmate. Helan was baffled. If Su Yang was on the same level as Gu Xiaoqian, then why did he have the nerve to provoke third-tier hunters? Helan assumed Su Yang didn't know his place and tried to warn him about the dungeon's high difficulty. But to her shock, Su Yang confidently responded that he knew exactly what he was doing. It was part of his second transfer task. This revelation surprised Helan. She couldn't understand how Su Yang could have advanced to level 40 so quickly. Before she could wrap her head around it, Wang Fei, done with being sidelined, stepped in, determined to shut Su Yang down. Showing off some of his power to intimidate, Wang Fei challenged Su Yang to reveal his level for all to see. If Su Yang didn't comply, Wang Fei insisted he should stop acting tough and just kneel. Unfortunately for Wang Fei, Su Yang was itching to teach him another lesson. Seeing that Wang Fei had reached level 10 made things even more fun for Su Yang. Unlike their last encounter, Su Yang could actually kill him this time, knowing Wang Fei would just resurrect later. In an instant, Su Yang flicked his finger, and with that, Wang Fei was turned into a donut-shaped human, instantly killed. Wang Fei didn't even realize what had happened until it was too late. Su Yang calmly collected his loot, while the big guy charged in, furious and ready to retaliate. But Su Yang, with his ultra instinct in full swing, casually dodged every attack as if it was nothing. The big guy was beyond angry. He had promised to protect Wang Fei, and now he had failed. Fueled by rage, he was determined to kill Su Yang, but Su Yang barely saw him as a threat. In fact, Su Yang wanted all the smoke and even asked the samurai, Helan, to join the fight just to avoid dealing with him later. That instantly ticked off Helan. Sure, Su Yang was here for his second awakening, but challenging both her and the big guy was a level of disrespect she couldn't ignore. Even though Su Yang was a friend of Gu Xiaoqian, Helan wasn't about to let this go. She and the big guy teamed up, attacking Su Yang together to put him in his place. They didn't give him a head start. The big guy swung at Su Yang, but Su Yang dodged every punch effortlessly. The big guy was left questioning his own speed. How could Su Yang be this fast? Refusing to accept it, the big guy switched to his special move, Thunder Tiger Fist, delivering a powerful right-hand hook, ready to take Su Yang down for good. Su Yang absorbed the big guy's powerful Thunder Tiger Fist like it was nothing, barely flinching before blasting him away as if hitting a home run. This move left a wide opening for Helan to strike from behind, but Su Yang was 2 steps ahead. He effortlessly blocked her sword strike with a crystal barrier, activated by a one-time scroll that could absorb up to 880,000 points of damage. Helan's attack barely made a dent in the shield, showing just how high caliber the scroll was. Seeing this, Helan had to reassess the situation. She noticed the weapon in Su Yang's hand, far superior to any gold-tier equipment she had ever seen. Everything started making sense to her, especially how easily Su Yang had instantly killed Wang Fei earlier. The speed at which it happened was so fast, she'd barely caught it. And now, Helan realized that if she kept going, she might end up like Wang Fei, dead on the spot. Before she could decide her next move, the big guy started to regain consciousness after his brief nap angrily shouting that he wouldn't stop until he killed Su Yang. But Su Yang had already had enough. With a flick of his wrist, he unleashed the full power of his sword, sending the big guy right back to sleep. For real this time. Turning to Helan, Su Yang calmly asked, "Do you still want to continue this?" Recognizing she was completely outclassed, Helan wisely sheathed her sword. Su Yang appreciated the gesture, especially given the connection between their guilds. This surprised Helan, but before she could say anything, Su Yang requested that she apologize to her guild leader on his behalf. He was going to take down the dungeon first. And with that, he walked into the Cave of Suffering, ready for what lay ahead. Contrary to its ominous name, the dungeon's interior was surprisingly beautiful. Giant crystal gems illuminated the space, creating a bright atmosphere where shadows were almost non-existent. Aside from his time in the Black Dragon Fortress, this was Su Yang's first time officially entering a wild dungeon, and he found it oddly refreshing. The dungeon was known to be the lair of goblins, a species Su Yang had yet to face in person. But he didn't have to search for long. A goblin archer emerged from the shadows, welcoming him with an arrow aimed straight for his head. Su Yang didn't even bother dodging, letting the arrow bounce off him as he sighed in disappointment at the goblin's weak attempt. The goblins, however, were cunning. They tried to play Su Yang by luring him into a false sense of security, hoping to pull off a sneaky surprise attack. But Su Yang's instincts were sharp, and he responded with lightning reflexes, launching a goblin into the air and sending it crashing into its companion for an easy double kill. After that encounter, Su Yang realized that this dungeon wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. He decided to stay sharp and avoid getting too overconfident. As he continued exploring, Su Yang reflected on his previous battle with the big guy. He realized he had mostly relied on brute strength and his attributes to overwhelm opponents. This was a bad habit. Against a stronger enemy, relying on pure strength wouldn't cut it. He'd need to outsmart his foes and hone his combat skills. This dungeon presented the perfect opportunity to sharpen his battle IQ and master his magic blade. With that in mind, Su Yang ventured deeper into the cave, where the light from the crystals faded into darkness. Prime territory for an ambush. Exactly what he was hoping for. Using his magic blade, Su Yang transformed it into a shield, blocking attacks from the goblins as they struck. He then morphed the blade into a hammer, smashing the life out of his enemies. More goblins attempted a sneaky aerial attack, but Su Yang stylishly dodged and shot them down with his mana blade, now transformed into a crossbow. But playing defense wasn't Su Yang's style. Deciding to go all out, he gathered up the remaining goblins, leading them into a narrow space where he unleashed his 40-meter greatsword, cutting through them all in a single massive attack. Every last goblin fell at once. Su Yang's mana blade was truly versatile, and the more he used it, the more excited he became about what new skills his 5-star transfer task would unlock. Soon, he reached the location of the dungeon's boss. As if sensing his presence, the boss appeared, a massive tiger. Su Yang couldn't help but find it humorous. The tiger, like many dungeon bosses, had the ability to talk, but its speech felt robotic and scripted. It was clear to Su Yang that bosses below Starlight tier didn't have true consciousness. Knowing this, Su Yang felt confident the fight was already over before it began. When the tiger lunged in for an attack, Su Yang masterfully countered with his demon blade, striking mid-air. Before the tiger even hit the ground, it was already dead. With the silver tier dungeon cleared and the boss down within 3 minutes, Su Yang only had one more dungeon left to complete his mission. So, he wasted no time moving on. As he exited the Cave of Suffering, he noticed other hunters keeping their distance, eyeing him warily. Curious, Su Yang asked what was up. They responded cautiously, saying they were just being careful and that he shouldn't mind them. But the unease on their faces was impossible to miss. It was understandable. Su Yang had just blown through the notoriously difficult Cave of Suffering in 5 minutes, and that left everyone around wondering what kind of monster he really was. Gu Xiaoqian, in particular, couldn't believe it. It felt like just yesterday they were classmates, but now it seemed like they were living in 2 completely different worlds. Without lingering too long, Su Yang entered another silver tier dungeon. Once again, he dispatched the boss with such ease it was almost laughable, reducing what should have been a formidable enemy to little more than a donut. And with that, he completed his 5-star transfer tasks. The system, impressed by his flawless execution, unlocked a hidden transfer mission for him titled Phase 1. The Lost Rusty Key. This new mission came with a map pointing to a location guarded by a fearsome beast and promised serious rewards if completed. a 5% boost to all his attributes, and a legendary skill book. It was clear this hidden task was linked to his class progression and likely involved a series of missions that would unlock as he advanced through each transfer phase. Su-Yang wasn't about to pass up on this opportunity. Just the 5% attribute boost alone was tempting enough, and the legendary skill book? That was just icing on the cake. Plus, with the name Phase 1, it was obvious this mission was just the beginning, making these 5-star tasks even more valuable than he had imagined. With this in mind, Su-Yang accepted the challenge. The target area for this mission was located in the advanced wilderness of Tianling City, where the average monster level was over 40. Su-Yang knew this wasn't going to be easy. The so-called fearsome beast had to be level 50 or higher, which was a real challenge, even for him. Still, he wasn't like anyone else. He had a Starlight tier weapon at his disposal. The only issue was he needed to unlock the weapon before he could use it. Unlocking diamond grade or higher tier weapons required boundless gems and the help of a Grandmaster blacksmith to socket them. The problem? There weren't any Grandmasters in Tianling City. That's when Su-Yang remembered the branch of the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion had recently set up shop in Tianling. The pavilion was known for selling dungeon strategies and had tons of general information, making it the perfect place to visit. Plus, the pavilion was part of the X-Alliance, and Su-Yang was very curious to see how they'd react when they saw his black gold card. As Su-Yang arrived in Tianling City, he was struck by the sheer number of people flocking to buy strategies. The place was packed, noisy, chaotic, with impatient customers jostling and arguing to secure their spots in line. Su-Yang couldn't help but feel a little out of place. After all, he'd just sold a bunch of items and had officially entered the ranks of the nouveau riche. It was almost embarrassing in this environment. But he shook it off and pushed forward, entering the building. That's when his attention was drawn to a familiar pair of faces, Zhou Tai and Lu Xi. Su-Yang hadn't expected to run into them so soon, and their conversation quickly pulled him in. Lu Xi was angrily venting to Zhou Tai about the loss of his Starlight-level weapon, hoping for some kind of compensation. But Zhou Tai wasn't having it. He was firm, reminding Lu Xi that there would be no reimbursement, especially since they were responsible for Chun Lan's downfall. In fact, Zhou Tai said they were lucky the headquarters hadn't punished them further. But Lu Xi wasn't satisfied. His frustration boiled over, and in a fit of rage, he lashed out, hurling the nearest piece of furniture across the room, which just so happened to fly directly towards Su-Yang. And Su-Yang? He wasn't about to let that slide. Despite the fact that Lu Xi was several levels ahead of him, Su-Yang didn't hesitate for a second. He confronted Lu Xi, calling him out on his tantrum. Lu Xi, already on edge, was enraged by the audacity. A fight was about to break out, but instead of throwing punches, Lu Xi stormed over, grabbing Su-Yang by the collar in a pathetic attempt to intimidate him. Su-Yang laughed in his face. He could see right through Lu Xi. He knew Lu was already on thin ice with the higher-ups and couldn't afford to escalate things further. Su-Yang wasn't just confident. He was untouchable in this situation. Lu Xi couldn't do anything to him. Despite the tension crackling in the air, Zhou Tai stepped in to defuse the situation. He reminded Lu Xi to watch his temper and urged Su-Yang to back off, explaining that they were handling some personal matters. But Su-Yang wasn't someone to be brushed aside that easily. He made it clear he wasn't just some random adventurer. He was an esteemed guest of the pavilion, there to seek information. His statement, however, was met with disbelief and scorn. To them, Su-Yang looked like a low-level nobody. The pavilion's high-end services weren't for the likes of him. Even Lu Xi seemed more reasonable compared to this guy, who was clearly pretending to be a big shot. They were about to teach him a lesson, when Su-Yang casually whipped out his black gold card, revealing his true status. But, as expected of the ever-foolish Lu Xi, he didn't recognize the card's significance. With a dismissive wave, he knocked the card out of Su-Yang's hand, putting Su-Yang in a tough spot. Dealing with an idiot like Lu Xi seemed like an uphill battle. Fortunately, before things escalated further, the level 120 Grand Steward of Tianling City, Jia Yu, arrived just in time. His arrival stunned both Zhou Tai and Lu Xi, as they had been eagerly awaiting his presence. But their warm words of welcome meant little to Jia Yu. He was absolutely furious at the unprofessional behavior displayed by his own people. Without a moment's hesitation, Jia Yu smacked the living daylights out of Lu Xi for his embarrassing oversight. The blow left Lu Xi speechless. His brother-in-law had never treated him this way before, and he was left wondering what he had done to deserve such harsh treatment. But Jia Yu had no time to explain to a fool. Instead, he turned to Su Yang and apologized sincerely for any trouble his subordinates had caused. Su Yang, feeling pretty satisfied by the Grand Steward's apology, decided to let the whole matter slide. With that, Jiayu expressed how impressed he was with Su Yang. Possessing a black gold card from the X-Alliance at such a young age could only mean one thing. Su Yang had completed a 5-star transfer task and earned the coveted VIP status. Su Yang confirmed this, and Jiayu's admiration only grew. He quickly turned to Zhou Tai, ordering him to make sure Su Yang was treated with the utmost respect. Zhou Tai nodded in understanding, while Lu Xi was still trying to process what had just happened. Jiayu then dragged Lu Xi away to have a little talk and discuss their next dungeon raid. This caught Su Yang's attention. Clearly, the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion was preparing for something big, and Su Yang took it as a sign that he needed to step up his own game. Once Jiayu and Lu Xi left, Zhou Tai returned to Su Yang, his tone now far more respectful. He asked how he could assist Su Yang, prompting Su Yang to lay out his requests. He needed the location of the master-level blacksmith in Tianling City, and he was also looking for boundless gems. The treasure pavilion had run out, and he wanted to stock up just in case. Zhou Tai responded that they could easily provide the information about the blacksmith. As for the boundless gems, they had them in stock, but they were very expensive. Zhou Tai assumed, even with the black gold card, that Su Yang might not be able to afford such high-priced items. Su Yang just smiled, casually flicking his finger to show that money wasn't an issue. Realizing who he was dealing with, Zhou Tai quickly decided to personally handle the retrieval of the gems for Su Yang, asking him to wait for a moment. Su Yang couldn't help but smile. The fact that even the Grand Steward of Tianling City showed him such respect made him even more curious about the power behind the transfer temple. They clearly held more sway than he initially thought. After a short wait, Zhou Tai returned with the items Su Yang needed. Su Yang took the goods, thanked Zhou Tai, and left the establishment, heading straight for the Old Wolf Forge, where the master blacksmith was said to be working. The forge itself was inconspicuous, tucked away from the bustling streets, but that only reinforced Su Yang's decision to trust the information he'd been given. Su Yang's fears started becoming reality faster than expected. Rumors began to swirl about an exploration team preparing to venture into the Black Dragon Sanctuary again. He thought it would take longer, especially after the fear he instilled with his skill, the one that prevented hunters from resurrecting. Apparently, the members of the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion had more guts than he initially gave them credit for. Still, Su Yang was confident. He figured their preparations would be delayed after what happened to Chen Lun, giving him enough time to grow stronger. But better safe than sorry. It was better to subdue the Black Dragon sooner rather than later to avoid any complications. With that in mind, Su Yang made his way to the Old Wolf Forge. Upon arriving, he was surprised to find other hunters there, Mu Rongshui, whom he'd met before, and a new face in Yu. Recognizing them as guildmates, Su Yang greeted them warmly, like any guildmate would. They quickly realized who he was, but things got weird fast, and Yu turned out to be down bad big time. The moment she saw Su Yang, she was practically drooling, hitting him with all sorts of personal questions like, "Do you have a girlfriend?" Or, "What about an older sister?" Su Yang, normally composed, was too stunned to speak. Thankfully, Mu Rongshui stepped in to bring the situation back to reality, keeping things family-friendly. She turned the conversation around, asking why Su Yang was at the master-level forge. She hinted that someone of his supposed level had no business there and suggested he head over to the commercial street blacksmith shop instead. That comment made Su Yang sigh. This was the second time today someone had doubted him. He was tired of explaining himself. So, instead of words, Su Yang showed them exactly why he was there, pulling out his Starlight Tier gear and a boundless gem. Instant silence. Both women were left speechless, and even the blacksmith himself stopped what he was doing. He hadn't seen a weapon of this caliber in a long time. With all eyes on him, Su Yang handed the weapon over to the master blacksmith, who accepted the challenge eagerly. So motivated by the task, the blacksmith's shirt tore off on its own, as if his muscles needed room to breathe. Proudly, he proclaimed that he would pour his life's work into making sure Su Yang's weapon was enhanced to perfection. And so, the master got to work, hammering away with such intensity that every strike sent sparks flying like shooting stars. It was a magical sight, the kind you'd only see when enhancing a Starlight Tier weapon. For Mu Rongshui and Yu, it was a rare and awe-inspiring moment. They had never seen anything like it. But what surprised Mu Rongshui even more was how calm Su Yang seemed, standing there unfazed by the spectacle, as if he had seen it all before. This only deepened the mystery around Su Yang's identity. Mu Rongshue's gaze lingered on him longer than she intended, something in you definitely noticed. With a mischievous grin, and you started teasing Mu Rongshue, accusing her of taking a liking to Su Yang. Mu Rongshue was completely flustered by the accusation. Meanwhile, Su Yang was sweating for a completely different reason. It wasn't the heat from the forge. It was the realization that he might have joined the wrong guild. Being the only guy in a guild full of women? Yeah, it was definitely a blessing, but also a serious curse. He felt like their gazes were about to devour him whole, sending a shiver down his spine. Su Yang couldn't help but feel like he was in real danger. If things kept going like this, he might actually die from being crushed by their attention. A few hours later, the blacksmith finished enhancing Su Yang's weapon. Su Yang was impressed, no more than impressed. He was stunned. The old man had done it on the first attempt. It was truly remarkable, especially since Su Yang had wasted so many materials when he tried to enhance the weapon himself. Grateful for the blacksmith's craftsmanship, Su Yang asked how much he owed him. The blacksmith, wiping the sweat from his brow, explained that typically he would charge 1 billion in fees for this kind of effort. But today, feeling reinvigorated by working on such a fine item, he decided to make an exception. He wouldn't charge Su Yang anything at all. Su Yang's generosity was unheard of, especially from someone dealing with a grandmaster blacksmith. While the old blacksmith insisted there was no charge for the service, Su Yang believed that respect should be paid where it was due. The blacksmith's work deserved to be recognized, so Su Yang handed over 1 billion in currency, not as a payment, but as a token of appreciation for the man's craftsmanship, while still respecting his wishes. The Grandmaster was visibly pleased by Su Yang's respectful gesture and happy to have worked with someone so well-mannered. Meanwhile, Yu was having a field day with her fantasies, watching the only male member of their guild casually drop billions like it was nothing. Seeing him turn down a freebie, smiling all the while, was checking off every box in her dream scenario. It wouldn't be a stretch to say she was already half in love with him. Even Mu Rongshue found herself bewildered by Su Yang's actions, wondering if he was the young master of some wealthy family. But Su Yang? He wasn't about to stick around and let things escalate any further. He dipped out of the forge as fast as he could, not wanting to deal with any more attention. A few moments later, Su Yang arrived at the outskirts of Tianling City, near the imposing Wild Spirit mountain range. The rugged landscape and eerie silence marked this as territory meant for second-tier awakeners or higher. But Su Yang was unfazed. He had a few tricks up his sleeve, expensive potions that permanently increased his attributes. After using the maximum allowed for each type, Su Yang drastically boosted his speed and spirit and redistributed his remaining attribute points. This allowed him to finally wield his legendary Shadow Bloodthirst Dagger, a weapon that exponentially increased his power and made him a match for a 4th-tier awakener. With confidence high, Su Yang dove into the dense forest, ready to hunt. As expected, the monsters here were aggressive. They immediately launched vicious attacks as soon as Su Yang set foot in their territory. But Su Yang was in his element. Before the monsters' attacks could even land, he activated his shadow form, boosting his speed and allowing him to effortlessly dodge before swiftly cutting down the enemies with his Starlight tier weapon, eliminating them with a single blow. But Su Yang wasn't about to waste time grinding through mobs one by one. He had a grander plan in mind. Using his usual method, he unfurled multiple scrolls at once and unleashed a massive AoE attack, obliterating the mobs in one fell swoop. The weaker enemies stood no chance. Su Yang's efficiency was something that could make even the legendary Megan proud. With the lesser mobs cleared, Su Yang set his sights on the cave of the terrifying beast that he needed to defeat to complete his mission. Based on the task description, Su Yang estimated the beast's level to be no less than level 50, and he was curious to see how many hits it would take to bring it down. Surprisingly, the trek through the cave was uneventful. There were no other monsters lurking about, likely because they had hidden away, knowing they'd be easily clapped by Su Yang if they showed themselves. This made Su Yang's path to the boss's lair smooth and easy. When he arrived, the scene was straight out of a nightmare. The lair was filled with treacherous terrain, dotted with spikes and pitfalls. At the center was an elevated rock formation, the resting place of the boss, surrounded by a pool of blood. The sight was intimidating, but what truly caught Su Yang's attention was that aside from the boss's name and level, no other information was visible. This added an extra layer of mystery and challenge. Su Yang realized he'd need a higher-tier skill book for clairvoyance to avoid surprises like this in the future. But for now, countered with relentless strikes from his demon blade, attacking from all sides and wearing down the boss's health. The beast roared in rage, but before it could retaliate again, Su Yang decided to end the fight decisively. He lunged straight for the beast's core and delivered a powerful final swing. The force of the attack reverberated through the cave as the boss's death throes echoed off the walls. Su Yang, standing over the fallen creature, was surprised to see that he had slain the beast so quickly. He had expected more of a fight, but the outcome left him satisfied. Among Su Yang's rewards was the key mentioned in his mission, but more intriguingly, there was something else, a rotten chunk of flesh. Its description hinted at its former owner's immense power. Even in its decayed state, it had been potent enough to mutate the boss he just defeated. With no other information available, Su Yang decided to stash the mysterious item for later. Figuring out its use could wait. Right now, his priority was to return and submit his class change mission. Moments later, Su Yang stood on the brink of a monumental transformation. Awakening to the next tier wasn't something that happened every day, and Su Yang's recent achievements had skyrocketed him far beyond the ordinary. After all, he had just completed a 5-star task, which caused his base attributes to soar by an impressive 25%. But that wasn't all. As part of his rewards, Su Yang gained an exclusive skill from magic warriors called Dual Spirit Enhancement. This skill was no joke. It boosted his spirit attribute by 10% of his current strength and vice versa, creating an insane synergy that enhanced his abilities even further. And the blessings didn't stop there. Thanks to completing his hidden mission, Su Yang unlocked even greater rewards. His overall attributes surged by an additional 5%. His class advanced to the rare and prestigious Magic Warrior. And best of all, he was gifted a legendary skill book. As his level cap lifted, Su Yang shot up to level 58, powered by the experience points he'd been sitting on for a while. With newfound power in hand, Su Yang carefully distributed his newly gained attribute points, splitting them evenly between strength and spirit. This balanced allocation took his base attributes to unprecedented heights, making him stronger than ever before. His stats were now above those of a third-tier Awakener, and combined with his high-grade equipment, Su Yang was more than ready to take on anything, even the Spirit Hunter Guild. The idea of facing a 4th-tier Awakener while still technically at 2nd-tier level was exhilarating. The disrespect that would come with winning a battle like that would be legendary. And if he considered using his new skill, Dual Destruction Blade, which allowed him to merge his Demon Blade with his equipped weapon, there was no doubt in his mind that the strike could obliterate even a Platinum-tier dungeon boss. This was a truly legendary ability. As Su Yang's awakening concluded, Bai Ling congratulated him on his latest achievement. His VIP benefits also got a significant upgrade. His monthly allowance jumped from 10 million to a staggering 50 million, and the discount on his Black Gold card improved from 20% to 30%. But despite all these incredible perks, Su Yang's perspective had shifted. They felt almost ordinary to him now, so he simply gave a casual nod and prepared to continue his grind. Before he left, Bai Ling asked about his next steps. Su Yang, feeling a bit worn out, mentioned he planned to take a break for 2 days. After all, balance between work and rest was important, even for someone like him. But rest didn't mean doing nothing. Su Yang was headed to the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion to grab a few key items for his next grand mission, slaying the Black Dragon himself.